Why, hello. Welcome to the continuing mission of the Captain's Cast. This is the Captain's Cast live stream. I am Captain Garrett. Welcome to Swords and Starships. We have a lot to discuss today. We have many exciting topics, mostly the topics that interest me. I'll admit, I'm really on a sci-fi, we're leaning heavily on starships in the Swords and Starships title these days. But we're going to talk about The Mandalorian. That is, if you're willing to put up with more talk about The Mandalorian. We're going to talk about Star Trek Picard Season 3. I have some thoughts about this recent episode that are, let's just say there's some things to unpack. And more great news. I'm really excited for the Super Mario movie. Are you excited for the Super Mario movie? I am. We have some REEEEs, some very unhappy SJW types who are really angry with Chris Pratt for respecting the fans. We're going to talk about that. We've also got to talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and DC's rather anemic attempt to revive their own cinematic universe. There are unfortunate signs on both accounts. And I think we'll also get into a really interesting piece about this fantasy author, Brandon Sanderson. Now, I will confess, I don't know much about Brandon Sanderson, but he's written this incredibly prolific. He's written something like 50 fantasy novels. He's written a bunch of other novels. I don't know a lot about him, but I just came across this piece, and he just got this terrible hit piece. We're going to talk about that, but he had a really eloquent response to it. So we got a lot going on in the stack of stuff. And so I, your captain, will guide you on this journey of entertainment news. And hello, Tom, in the chat. Welcome in. And hello, Erigmar, a.k.a. Black Knight. And to all of you fine folks watching on the replay, how are ye? Let's get into it, shall we? So, it's a really interesting situation that we're in because we can on the one hand compare Star Wars, which is for almost no reason sinking into specifically The Mandalorian, sinking into a terrible decline, and on the other hand, we have Star Trek Picard, which also inexplicably is pretty good. Pretty good. So I watched both of these series, and I have to say, I probably didn't have as much fun with The Mandalorian this last episode. So the last episode, we have this just mindless, and then this happened, and then this happened, constant plot drivel of, the pterodactyl attacking. I really did enjoy the pterodactyl. But this next episode, we have the pirate attack. Okay, spoilers for The Mandalorian. I have been told some people don't like spoilers on The Mandalorian. I wish I could tell you that they're really spoiler. What is there to spoil in the show? Stuff happens. That's what this show is about. Stuff happens. I guess I won't spoil too much about it. I'm just going to say some pirates attack. And there were 4 or 5 little moments in this episode that I kind of liked, scattered among the absolute boring eye rolls of the whole episode. There were a couple of moments where I could see what could have been. It's essentially Grief Karga on his planet is trying to get the people prosperous, and he's, what's the name of that planet? What's Grief Karga's planet? Because okay, Grief Karga planet. Who even knows how to spell that? Navarro. Okay, that's it. Navarro. A surprisingly banal name for a Star Wars planet, but okay, so Grief Karga is trying to make Navarro great again. I couldn't help myself. I'm sorry. So Grief Karga on Navarro, he has no security force on this planet. He's the only guy that polices it. he's got and apparently it's a very big world with lots of people in it. There's like 20 people on this planet, like 20. There's no one else on this planet. The pirates attack. This is in the beginning of the episode, so I'm not spoiling that much. uh, right off the bat, these pirates descend to get revenge for their guys being killed because they couldn't drink in a school, which is the dumbest conversation in this whole show. In episode 1, we can't drink at a school. I'm just going to spoil it all. So, I'm reinstituting my official spoiler warning. And all the townspeople are fleeing and screaming terror from the pirates that are just bombarded, and the ship just kind of hovers over the town and just starts bombarding it all. And all the people are fleeing, screaming in terror. And when I say all the people, I mean 20 extras. I mean fully, like, maybe 30 if I'm being generous, extras. And they're running out into the desert. They have nowhere to go. They're just fleeing. Grief Karga's leading them. Stay calm, people. Stay calm. And I'm like, I thought this was a big planet. It's amazing how this show is making the vast, expansive galaxy far, far away. It's making it small and tiny. And it's you know what this show's turning into? It's turning into a cartoon. It's turning into a Dave Filoni Saturday morning cartoon. And I can prove it to you. Because the pirates could almost have been interesting. Imagine if they had done these pirates like actual space pirates, like scary, like dangerous, like they're going to do bad things to people, right? It doesn't have to be more than PG-13. I'm not saying they have to go all hard R or anything. I'm just saying make them plausible. Make them like what actual pirates might be like in a big galaxy where there's some lawlessness going on. I mean, at the very least, just look, follow the template of a Western, right? Just make them like bandits in a Western film, like a Clint Eastwood or John Wayne film. Just make them like that, right? And they just show up and have them be using technology. But what do? They do this Davy Jones knockoff where I don't understand this character. This pirate captain is a giant houseplant. That's the only way I can describe it. He's a houseplant. And he's a talking houseplant. And it could almost be interesting if it weren't so preposterous. And then, how does the captain... No, I'm going to save that. First, all of his bridge crew talk like pirates of the Caribbean. I might be seeing Disney's actual fingerprints on this episode. This is Pirates of the Caribbean in Star Wars. And the pirates are dressed like pirates of the Caribbean. They've got like bandanas. They've got like, tunics that kind of are reminiscent of what pirates would wear in the Caribbean. And I'm like, this is so stupid. You don't make pirates like Pirates of the Caribbean in space. That's cartoon stuff. And then, how does the captain steer the ship? With a wheel. I shit you not. A wheel. He steers in a three-dimensional navigational plane, let's say, which is space. He's steering a ship with a wheel, which is designed to steer a ship on a two-dimensional plane. What? Who enjoys the show? I can't even... Apparently not very many. And I've got the numbers to prove it. So... Yeah, Eric Mar says, "Oh no, we can't have respect for the fans." Yes, we're going to talk about Chris Pratt's very brilliant little response to a typical. I wouldn't say it was typical. I actually didn't feel like the host was really baiting him into. And yeah, what do you think of all these toxic fans? She kind of had a genuine question of like, what did you think of the response? Which is fair. That's a fair question. But when they're on the red carpet, they're like, what did you think of all these toxic troll fans? And it's like, you're kind of leading the witness. So, Fu Man Blue, welcome into the chat. Nice to see you, Fu Man Blue. Says Mundan. I'm going to try and make this work here. Mundanalorian. That's probably what... Mundanalorian. I think that's how you would say that. Yeah, I would agree. It is the most mundane show. Chris Gore... Hail Film Threat absolutely nailed it when he said that This is like Star Wars goes to the DMV. They go to the High Republic to get the distances in this show are so non-existent anymore. Grief Karga sends a distress call. And I'm thinking, yeah, it's going straight to the Mandalorian because obviously he's got the hookup with Din Djarin. This, at least this is something that they've been setting up this whole time. They've been setting up that Grief Karga is going to need Din Djarin. Well, whatever, fine. It's a side quest. The pirates are immaterial. They don't have anything to do with the larger plot, at least so far, and we're 5 episodes in. So he sends a distress call, but not to Din Djarin. He sends it to a High Republic fighter. And that I'm saying High Republic. It's the New Republic. There's so many republics. New Republic fighter, and he goes. So it goes to a New Republic starfighter base that's on some planet somewhere. I'm just getting to the point now where it's always just some planet. There's no distinctiveness to any of these planets. And the New Republic fighter gets off of the base, flies all the way to Coruscant. He flies all the way to Coruscant, lands at like essentially the equivalent of the New Republic DMV. And he goes in there, and Tim Meadows of Saturday Night Live fame plays this snarky, annoying bureaucrat who's just a pencil pusher. And he basically just stonewalled, we got too many things going on. And it's all played for laughs. The whole scene is played for laughs. It's like he just doesn't care. Oh, we're busy now. This isn't a rebellion anymore. We've got... And I'm like, how boring is this? They've turned Star Wars into, to be fair, Lucas did introduce the whole concept of Senate debates in the prequels, if we're being totally fair. But this is so much worse. This is like literally, they're in offices with cubicles all the time in this show now. If I wanted to see offices full of cubicles, I would just go to work. That's what I would do. But if I'm watching Star Wars, my hope is I'm going to see like alien planets and fascinating adventures and heroes and villains duking it out. That's kind of what I'm looking for. I don't know about you, what you want out of your Star Wars, but a trip to the DMV is not my idea of fun. So he goes to the DMV. They say, no, we're too busy. We're not going to help out Navarro. You're going to have to find help elsewhere. And this, my dear sailors and star nuts, is kind of where the problem of this whole show comes in. I already know. I knew from the first minute what this was leading to. The Mandalorians are going to have to help. The problem is I'm so far ahead of the plot that I can't even stand it because I'm like, yeah, I know. He's got to be told no. And then he's got to have a scene where he says, what do I do? So that then he can get to the part where he goes to the Mandalorians and asks them for help. And it's not even that easy because he goes. So then the starfighter pilot, I don't know his name and I don't care, goes to the Mandalorian beach, which I couldn't help but think, wouldn't it be funny when he lands on the beach if like then, a Tyrannosaurus Rex comes out and just like grabs him? I would have loved it. I would have been so happy if that had happened. Just the Tyrann. Oh my God, another one. No. Oh no. Oh, it would have been amazing. Oh, see, I'm helping you out here, Mandalorian. But no, he lands on the beach. The waters are all These idiotic Mandalorians still haven't moved. They haven't moved. They just stay on this beach. And it's like, oh yeah, maybe I'll go for a dip later. Where the crocodile's not dead, by the way. There's another crocodile out there. Because Din Djarin killed one, and the one that killed the pterodactyl is a different one. So there's multiple of these giant things. So anyway, Star Pilot lands there, and we have to have this dumb scene where the Mandalorian's like, you're trespassing, go away, we'll shoot you. And he's like, I'm come in peace, and Grief Karga. There's this thing where Grief Karga sent a message, and the pilot listens to the message, right? Which is fine. Please, we need your help. You're our only hope. Then he goes to the DMV in the New Republic, and he plays the message again for Tim Meadows, and Tim Meadows listens to about half the message, and I'm like, this is kind of weird. Like, usually you write the story structure so that you're not replaying exposition multiple times. So then fast forward to this scene, the pilot is throwing the message to Din Djarin and saying, Grief Karga is asking for help. And I'm like, oh, please do not play that message a third time. I don't want to see it. a third time. And mercifully, they did not. But I'm like, this is how clunky the writing is, right? It's like he shouldn't have even thrown him the disc. He should have just said, Grief Karga needs help. He's in desperate peril, blah, blah, blah. But again, these Mandalorians only exist when they're needed to be a momentary obstruction in the plot, which we know is not going to last. This is the problem. It's like, yes, we have the obligatory, you're trespassing. No, we're not going to help you. Go away. I won't reveal your location. Who cares? So then Din Djarin has to have this big explanation. He's got to convince all the Mandalorians to help him. There's no emotion in this scene. There's no life in it. I feel nothing in all of this. The only thing I enjoyed was when the Mandalorians show up in Navarro and they start kicking some ass. There was some moments of coolness in like that part. But then it's ruined by the big dumb plant pirate who's steering his three-dimensional starship with a wheel. A freaking wheel. I can't believe this show. Here's the pièce de résistance. It ends with Bo-Katan going to visit the blacksmith. Oh, the blacksmith fights with the hammer and tongs. I forgot. She literally fights with tongs in this episode. They covered it on FNT, so I'm not going to... Friday Night Tights. They covered it on Friday Night Tights, so I feel redundant to point this out. But it's insanely stupid. It's like, okay, I get that this is her thing, that she's the blacksmith and she's cool because she has the hammer. It doesn't mean she has to fight in every single scene, literally with her hammer. Like, could she maybe use one other weapon? Just throwing out ideas. Don't mind me. And then we get Bo-Katan being told she is the one, and she does not have to wear a helmet anymore because she walks between both worlds. And I'm like, this is why this is so stupid. Yeah, number one, it's like, yeah, Bo-Katan, this is the Bo-Katan show. And she's totally taken it over. It's a bait and switch, and it's so lame because Din Djarin has nothing to do anymore. And she's boring. She's a boring character. I feel nothing for this character. All she does is say things like, okay, I will do that. Okay, I will lead our people. Why? Like, why? Why are you now following these Mandalorians? There's no explanation for this in her character. She just is doing it. She was totally against it in season 2, and now she's totally fine with it. And I guess I don't have to wear my helmet? Cool. It's like she's listening to her supervisor just tell her things at work. Just like, oh, there's a new company policy. You no longer have to wear your helmet. Oh, why is that? Well, we've decided that, you're an exception in the company dress code. So you can choose not to wear your helmet if you want. And she's like, oh, okay, cool. I appreciate that. This is work from home Star Wars writing. I figured it out. This is what work from home writers turn in, right? They're mostly just watching, no disrespect, but they're mostly just watching YouTube. And they're like, oh shit, I had a couple pages to write for The Mandalorian. I got to turn those into my boss. The pirates are there. They're like Pirates of the Caribbean pirates, and they got a wheel on the ship. Cool. That should give them enough to do. So now Bo-Katan, but this is the most annoying thing about Bo-Katan no longer having to wear the helmet. It illustrates that the writers themselves are annoyed by the thing that they already wrote into it, which is this weird, this dumb cultural trope where they all have to wear their helmets forever. They're not committed to this. They don't like it. The writers don't like, they've wrote themselves into a corner. And this can happen to any writer, right? You write yourself into a corner, you're like, oh crap. Now this is really frustrating because I don't want them wearing the helmets anymore, but I wrote it in season 1, so what am I going to do? And so they're like, I don't want Bo-Katan to have to wear a helmet. So we'll write some dumb plot where she has to wear it for a while, but then she's special because she saw the monster, and now she doesn't have to. And it takes, you can't possibly get invested in a show when you can see how bad, you can see the writers, like the wheels turning. We're like, okay, how do I write this? She doesn't have to wear a helmet anymore because I just want to be able to see her face. Oh, this is so frustrating. This show's garbage. It is absolute crap. It's just paint drying every minute of it. Who is this star pilot, by the way? Oh, they brought in Zeb from Star Wars Rebels, which I kind of liked Star Wars Rebels. It was much more cartoonish than Clone Wars, so I'm not wild about it. But it had like, I'd say every third episode of Star Wars Rebels was pretty good. And about two of them were just boring Saturday morning cartoon side quests that I just wasn't that interested in. But I did like Zeb was okay. Zeb was an okay character in that show. He was kind of a typical Saturday morning cartoon character. And they bring him in to this episode. He's now in live action. And you know what this is? This is Dave Filoni wish fulfillment. This whole show is Dave Filoni wish fulfillment now. It's like, oh, remember all my cool toys from all the shows I made? I'm gonna port them in. I'm gonna import. Dave Filoni has a hotkey where he just says import from Clone Wars, import from Star Wars Rebels. Cool. Erigmar says, imagine if they did space pirates like the space pirates in Star Shatter Universe, referencing his own Star Shatter Universe sci-fi series. So do check that out. It is on Amazon. By Black Knight. Fu Man Blue says, yeah, like a Western or like a George Lucas movie, even if not. Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if it were like a George Lucas movie? You know, I gave George Lucas a lot of crap after the prequels, I will say. And for some good reason. I mean, Attack of the Clones is a pretty shitty movie, if you ask me. But with good moments in it. I like the fight at the end of Attack of the Clones and Count Dooku and all that. But, like, it's mostly a crap movie. And, you know, he introduced... Look, the Senate could have been done well in The Phantom Menace. It just went on too long. It was just bad pacing is really what the problem with it was. He got bogged down in too much of the details of the Senate debate and procedure. And it's like, okay, you got to make this flow a little more here. But that is a very different thing from this kind of just there's nothing happening in the show. And at least Lucas used to say, I try to take the fans to a new planet every movie. Like when I make my movies, I try to always show you something new. And you know what, George Lucas, I owe you an apology, okay? I owe you an apology. You were right about that. I am sorry. I salute you, sir. The captain salutes George Lucas. Because at least he wanted the world to feel bigger, right? And it was, actually. Coruscant originally made the Star Wars universe feel large because it was the whole planet is a city. And I was like, whoa, that's cool. We've never seen that before at that point in Phantom Menace, right? And then the Gungan city, I mean, the Gungans are annoying as hell, granted. But their city underwater was cool because, like, that was new. I'd never seen anything like that before. And then there were... Every movie added something to this universe. Every film added more to it. And I feel like what's happening with Disney Star Wars is every new show, every new movie, and now every new episode, it's contracting. Like Navarro, go back and watch the first episode, or I don't know if it's exactly the first, but maybe it's one of the first couple episodes of The Mandalorian, like the first season. He's on Navarro, I believe. I mean, I'm not 100% on the geography here because all these planets look the same to me. But I'm pretty sure it was on Navarro where Grief Karga like tried to betray him in the first season. Compare how that planet looks in the first season to how it looks now. And I can only imagine its declining budgets because it's like 20 extras. It's the whole population of the planet. Like it's this, like... Pirates are attacking Navarro. You do realize Navarro's not a town. Navarro is a planet. You're implying that an entire world is being occupied by one pirate ship. And that by taking one small, tiny settlement, you've occupied the whole planet. Like, this can only make this universe seem small and silly. So... they're not scaling things well. Tom says, oh my God, seeing the ladies' man in Star Wars. Yeah, that's right. Tim Meadows is the ladies' man. Seeing the ladies' man in Star Wars was the strangest thing. What was their intent there? I'll tell you exactly what their intent there was, right? So here's where I think, and this is me being charitable to the writers. Here's where I think they're coming from. I think that Star Wars has been very much a kind of popcorn pulp fiction, space adventure. You know what it is? It's I don't know what the word for this is, but you know how we call it sword and sorcery is kind of what we call it when it's fantasy, but it's not meant to be like deep like Lord of the Rings. It's just meant to be fun and just pulp fiction, right? Like Conan the Barbarian is kind of sword and sorcery, I guess you would say. This is the equivalent in sci-fi is what Star Wars is. It has depth to it. I'm not saying it doesn't have depth and meaning to it. I'm just saying it's meant to be at its core. It is a fun space adventure. And because of that, a lot of it is naturally kind of wild and outlandish and kind of, and there's meant to be a kind of fantasy element to it. And I think that what the writers are doing is they're looking at that and they're saying, how can we take a second look at this world and make it seem more real? And I think the way they're getting at it is they're injecting the mundane into Star Wars. And another way to put it is I think what they're trying to show is how ordinary people live in the Star Wars universe. And Andor kind of did that, right? Andor kind of showed what it's like to just be an average Joe in Star Wars. But I think the problem with that is they're going too far. They're going way too far in that direction, because it's one thing to show how ordinary people have to go to a job every day and they just want to live under the Empire, mind their business and not get hauled off to jail, and they got to work. That's one thing, right? A slice of life, let's call it. Luke farming on a planet, right? That's fine. But when you literally start having entire plots revolve around annoying bureaucrats that are pencil pushers and they just have a budget to keep, it's like, whoa, you're taking all the magic out of this. This happened in Revenge of the Sith for me. There's one moment in Revenge of the Sith where Yoda throws the Emperor across the room and he lands on his office chair and he tumbles over it. And I've remembered this since I saw it in the theater. I couldn't believe how dumb that was. And I remember thinking, the Emperor has an office chair. And that made me start thinking about him just sitting at his desk, typing. Yes, send a text to Lord Vader. And he's like, oh, I have some documents to sign. Documents to sign? Oh, where is my coffee? And I just, it's like I'm picturing the Emperor just being at work. And I'm like, oh, that ruins it for me. It ruins it for me. So seeing the Emperor flop over an office chair ruins the magic, takes me out of the illusion. But that was just one little moment. This whole show now, this whole Mandalorian season is like that for me. Every bit of it is, this is weird. It's weird. I get an uncomfortable feeling when I'm watching it that it's so hyper banal. But okay, enough about that. I meant to catch up on the chat here. So Erigmar says, I want blasters, lightsabers, and space battles in my Star Wars. I'm with you. Fu Man Blue says, yeah, the only equity and inclusion I think he's replying here, I would approve of would be both space fights and saber duels with different colors. Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with not having everything be about the Jedi. I really am. But I'm not saying that I want less of the magic. That's definitely... And I don't want less of the Force, by the way. One of the things I liked about Rogue One was Donnie Yen's character, who was like, the Force is with me. Or no, what was it? I won with the Force is one with me. I loved that because it implied that a non-Jedi character was in tune with the Force and was able to use it. And I felt that was the original intent of what the Force was meant to be. It was a spiritual energy that all people in the galaxy could participate in. And the Jedi had just simply learned to use it, where, most people are just oblivious to it. That was kind of what I thought. And I like that. So I think you can tell a story without the Jedi, but still have it be magical and interesting. Tom says, if the crocodile ate the New Republic pilot and one of the Mandos turns to another and says, okay, one more time, can we relocate? Yes. Look, I have the conch. No, we're not talking about the crocodile again. I have the conch. We need to move. It's like, Fu Man Blue, like Gary always says, Favreau can't write television. Yeah, is that what it is? I disagree with Gary on this. Actually, I disagree with him. I think he's referring to Gary from Nerdrotic. I think this is work from home writing, is what I think it is. I think Favreau is checked out. Look, he's working with other writers that can write television, presumably. I mean, actually, I take it back. No one in Disney Plus can write television because all of their shows are they're weird. Andor was weird. The episodes would just end with no real ending. So yeah, there's some of that. But I think what maybe it is that Favreau, they don't care, right? They're not engaged. Imagine yourself in Favreau's position. You can't do anything that takes a risk. You can't have anything be too intense for the viewers. Baby Yoda has to be in it, X amount of minutes every episode. It would be stifling. Why would you bother? Like I've been in work environments where I was having fun doing my job, and then someone says, no, you have to do it exactly this way, and I start getting micromanaged, and then I checked out. I'm like, you know what? I will give you my minimum effort so that you are off my back, and I will give you nothing more that I have to offer as a worker. I will give you not one more thing. So if you're in management, keep that in mind, by the way. If you smother your people, they will retreat. They will disengage. And that's what I think is happening. Like, Favreau is a talented guy. So is Filoni, honestly. But just a theory. I could be wrong about this, but I think why bother if you know it's going to be fed through the algorithm wood chipper anyway? It's like, why bother? It's kind of what I think is happening to Marvel, too. This Erigmar says this is the Boss Katan show. It really is. And I was thinking about this, and I thought part of what I objected to about Bo Katan being in charge is that she's boring. She's just a boring ass character. But then I thought about it, and I was like, even if she were interesting, even if she were a really cool leader who had a great journey, this isn't her show. This is Din Djarin's show. It should be about him. And if he's not the right person to be the leader, then put him in a story where he doesn't have to be. Don't put him in a story where it's about the Mandalorians rebuilding their civilization if his part in that is just to stand by and watch. And that's the problem, right? That's what's wrong with putting Bo-Katan in the main in the main role. It's like you've now made her the protagonist of the whole series, and now you've completely removed any dramatic tension of Din Djarin. He's just there to kick ass once in a while. And this is the only episode, by the way, that he kicked any ass. Like, he has been... I liked a lot of the fight scenes with him. Like, in season 2, when he fights the big dangerous robots that Moff Gideon had, the dark, super killer robots, whatever the hell they were. And Din Djarin just couldn't beat even one. Like, that was cool, though. Watching him fight those things was really awesome. So Din Djarin used to have good scenes. He's got nothing in this season. He is boring as hell. All the Mandalorians are. They just... Fu Man Blue says, LOL, reminds me of how 90% of the planets SG-1 visited look like forests of Canada. Respect, though. Best show ever. When I was introduced to season-long through lines in X-Files, I thought it was great. Now that's all there is anymore. There aren't enough qualified writers working at the moment to support that change. Try Star Trek Picard Season 3. I actually think they do a good job of having a kind of balance between a through line and episodic. And I think that's the way to get at it. But I also take your point, because there was an art form to having a status quo show where... But again, that was because there was network TV back then, right? There were 24 episodes a season, taking X-Files, which is a great show. There were 24 episodes, and people, there's weeks where there'd be a rerun, and people would forget. They'd forget what was going on in the show. So you couldn't have those season-long arcs. 24, starring, Kiefer Sutherland, that was one of the first shows ever that was a major network show that was 100% every episode. You had to know what happened. Lost was another one that was kind of like that. But most shows back then, they had to be that way. And now they don't because of streaming. Speaking of SG1, you mentioned that every my dad loves that show, by the way. He is a huge SG1. He's a huge Stargate fan. And every planet looks the same. But you know what SG1 had? SG1 had a low budget. SG1 didn't have all the resources that Disney has. SG1 did not have a giant, massive fan base that they could command. They didn't have any of those advantages. They had to work with what they had. So I have great respect for what a show like SG1 could do. Star Wars has no excuse for this lack of creativity. None. It's like Bane says in the Dark Knight Rises, "Victory has defeated you, Disney. Victory has defeated you." Tom says the Emperor, "Unlimited coffee." Yes, unlimited. He's like, "Marcy, could you come in here, please?" "Yes, my Dark Lord." "Why is the Keurig empty again?" Is it empty?" It's like, "I told you I wanted the Keurig water filled to the brim. I hate having to refill the Keurig." "I'm sorry, my lord." It's like, look, everyone has to go to work, okay? Even the Emperor. Fu Man Blue says, "Sadly, there are a million writers that could do well, but they can't be hired because they don't fit the right profiles." Yeah, they... Look, I think we put a lot of this on the feet of like wokeness, SJW storytelling, which is to be more specific, propaganda storytelling in which all you're doing is just shoving all your bumper sticker slogans into the plot. There is no plot. That's part of it, definitely. Identity politics is a huge part of it. But also, it's just corporate. It's just corporate writing. It's all the bean counters are in charge of everything at Disney. They're in charge of everything. They are accountants. They are writing this show from the perspective of an accountant. Endgame made us $1 billion. How many billions will this one make us? Well, it's Ant-Man Quantumania, so it's gonna make us at least 1.1 billions. Good. Well, that makes sense because the other one made us 1 billion. Make us that one. Well, the last time we made one that made us 1 billion, it had 400 million in special effects. Good. Put 450 million in special effects in this one, and it'll make us 1.5 billions. And it's like, that's how they think. They don't understand that there was an art and a craft to how they made these in the beginning. Fu Man Blue says, "No, the fact that they were out in the real world always meant a lot to me. Work from home is a good term for it." I really think it's phoning it in, right? It's phoning it in. Neutron Boar, welcome to the chat, Neutron Boar, says, "Evening, everyone. Evening. Permission to come aboard granted." Fube Blue says, "Hello." Everyone's saying hello in the chat. I love a friendly chat. Erigmar says, "They are boring because they're not real Mandalorians. Try the Mandalorians from the KOTOR games." I've never heard of the KOTOR games, and I absolutely know that you're right about that, because the Mandalorians are a giant missed opportunity. They were a layup. They were they were coasting on the fact that they were already kind of interesting because of Boba Fett. Boba Fett in the original trilogy was interesting in spite of Lucas's intentions. Lucas never wrote Boba Fett to be anything other than just a plot device. He was a plot device. He was a bounty hunter that was hunting Luke, and he just happened to be the one that was smart enough, to find Han Solo. I'm probably getting my plot mixed up from the original trilogy. Yeah, it's been a while. But essentially, Boba Fett was the one that was able to track them effectively. Han Solo, that is. But the fans were intrigued. They were like, "Ooh, yeah, Vader had that weird line about no disintegrations, and then Boba Fett had this kind of cleverness about him, and he had an interesting helmet. His helmet looks cool. By the way, his helmet looks kind of distinctly Spartan. It's got that kind of ancient Greek look about it. And that intrigued the fans, so it was organic. It was an organic level of interest. And so the Mandalorians had that going in, and all they had to do was look at the novels, the extended universe. All they had to do was look at what were kind of some of the things that fans already liked about them. They had that entire shelf of books they could have drawn from. If they were struggling to figure out what this is the way, okay, how about you go read some of those novels that were written and figure out what is the way and start showing us what are some of these cultural elements they're talking about. Yeah, and I'm not talking about we have to wear our stupid helmet. Even the writers can't stand that trope. You know they can't stand it because the first chance they got rid of it for Bo-Katan. So that tells me they hate it. They hate this stupid thing. So if you're watching this show and you think that I'm wrong about this and I'm just being a big meanie, think about that for a second. The writers of this show don't like that trope. So why should I? So Fu Man Blue says, yeah, watching Picard, it doesn't count given the way that guy got the gig. True, he kind of got it by accident, Terry Metalis. Before 24, I had no idea how many episodes were in the average season. I know, right? Every show was like that back then. It was 24 episodes, and usually you'd have reruns in the middle of a season run. 24 never did reruns, or breaks. Like 24 every single week was another episode. Oh, I love that show. It's one of my favorite of all time. I miss it so much. Boo Man Blue says, and they didn't tell their fans that they were racist if they didn't like each episode. Exactly. It's like, which on that subject we're going to talk. I have a great thing to show you on that exact subject. So let's keep it pushing here. I have some interesting things in the stack of stuff. I'm going to circle back to Star Trek Picard because Picard is doing great. But there was this excellent video, and I'm going to share it with you. Let me know if there's any audio problems because I prepared before the stream. The captain was very diligent today, but you know, it's a work in progress. Let's see, where is it? Stream video. There we go. Cool. All right, so we are going to watch. So this is Chris Pratt answering a question for the media. So let us.
Okay, so you guys have kind of poked fun at this. The voices. When the trailer came out, everyone was like, "Why don't they sound more?"
And of course, he's talking about the Super Mario Brothers movie. And just to set this up a little bit, so there was a controversy, if you didn't know. A lot of people didn't like the idea of Chris Pratt voicing Mario because in that first trailer, frankly, he doesn't sound very much like Mario. He's like, oh, you know, he sounds like Chris Pratt. That's basically what he sounds like. I've seen some of the more recent trailers, and he's sounding a little better. He's kind of got a little bit of the wah-ha, you know, he's got that kind of going. So he's not doing terrible, but I still think, yeah, it's a weird choice. Chris Pratt is such a weird choice for this voice. And so he got a lot of backlash for this, and so she's asking about it.
Italian, but I think the movie handles it in such a great way. So what do you say to the people who are saying they need to sound more Italian?
Come watch the movie. Go watch the movie and then we can talk. I really think that like once you see the movie, and you know what? And in all honesty, I think you probably need to watch it twice. I think that in all honesty, the answer though is that this is a passionate fan base, and it makes sense. Like I understand, I'm part of it. This is the soundtrack to your youth. Yeah. And you don't want someone to come along and cynically kind of destroy it as a cash grab with the movie. I fully understand that. You do not want that to happen.
Wow. Can we just let that sink in for just a minute? Imagine that answer. I mean, he has taken a lot of shit for his voice acting, and a lot of people were pissed just because the guy who, and I forget his name, but he's famous. You probably remind me, chat, but the guy who actually voices Mario in the N64 and all the video games, a lot of people were like, he should have got the role. That was his role. So Chris Pratt has gotten a lot of crap. And how does he respond? He basically says, I get it. I'm a fan too. I understand. This is your childhood. Holy crap. Imagine the humility. That just shows me that he's one of the very rare few in Hollywood that has not allowed his fame and his fortune to ruin his, he's grounded. He is a grounded man. He's a naturally strong man because if you are a strong person, it is not easy. You're not going to be as shall we say, susceptible to the kind of narcissism we see. And also, she asked that question in a very fair way, which I appreciate. She just said, how do you feel about it? She didn't do this kind of totally leading the interview. Oh, well, how the fan base can be very toxic, and there's a lot of problematic things that we see on those tweets. And I'm just wondering, like, what would you say to the toxic, evil fans? It's like this. She asked it like just a question, and I give her credit for that.
And there were so many hearts and souls and minds dedicated to making sure that didn't happen. And you saw the movie; it's really honors the video game. It honors the world of Mario, and is very promising as to like what we could expect over the next 10 years, like an entire universe of these types of movies. They're super nostalgic. They're really fun. It's Illumination, so they know what they're doing, and it's great.
Is the Mushroom Kingdom everything that's as magical as we all hope it is?
It's truly magical, yes.
Yeah.
Not only that, I mean, this film does an amazing job of honoring the video game. And so like from the way they compose certain shots to the way they compose the music,
all the Easter eggs throughout the
thing, honoring the characters, pulling from that sentiment of our youth, but also basically every generation since the 80s who have all played the Mario games.
They like took such care for someone who's a Mario fan or a Nintendo fan in general to really give the audience exactly what they would want out of a movie.
Yeah, I just see that is the appropriate answer. That is the appropriate answer. If you are asked about a toxic fan base for any reason, the actress who played Reva in Obi-Wan Kenobi, that should have been her answer. Right? Her answer should have been, you know what? Yeah, there's some people that say some pretty rotten things, I'll admit, but mostly this is a passionate fan base, and I understand. This is Obi-Wan, this is Anakin, they mean a lot, and I'm just, come and see it. Just watch it and see the love and care we put into it, and how hard I worked to give them a worthy antagonist. Imagine if she had reacted that way, right? What I like about what Chris Pratt is saying there is he's also answering by inviting people to just give him a chance. He's not saying, oh, well, trolls will be trolls. I don't let that bother me. I don't let that bother me. I'm a professional, and, there's always going to be jerks and blah, blah. No, he says, well, come and see the movie. Come and see it twice. Just give it see what we put into this. And that is as fair, but that buys so much goodwill. And this is one thing Hollywood truly, in their myopic, blinkered approach to marketing, right? This stupid aphorism that like all press is good press, bad press is good press. It's bullshit. It's total bullshit. There's not a shred of truth to that. It is true that criticism can often indicate that you have some influence, but it is not in and of itself a good thing. What Hollywood does not understand is that when you speak to people as equals, right, is when you speak to people as if they don't owe you anything, and you ask them rather than demand, it's amazing how much goodwill you will get from people, because the people that are always lecturing us about my equality, my equity, my justice, it's like they're the most arrogant, conceited jerks. Like they look down on everyone around them. And it's like people, the fastest way, people may not always remember what you say. They will often forget what you say, but they will never forget how you make them feel. And Hollywood does not understand this. When Tom Cruise came on that screen before Top Gun Maverick, it totally surprised everyone in the audience with just, hey, thank you for coming to the theater. I know there's a lot of other options out there. We worked really hard on this film. You're going to see real planes. It means a lot. And we did this for you. And we hope you enjoy. Wow. I guarantee you that at 99 out of 100 PR people in Hollywood would have thought that was stupid. They would have thought, oh, that's not going to do anything. It's like, these people don't know shit. about actual humanity. That's talking to your audience, not talking down to them. Like this is what Chris Pratt is doing. And this is why I have a feeling, it's a growing feeling I have, that Super Mario is about to do something special. I don't know. I haven't seen the movie, right? I'm looking forward to seeing it, actually. I don't think I would have ever said that before, but I actually am kind of looking forward to it. And I think it could be really good. And if it's good, it is going to... I think it's going to be something of a phenomenon. I have a feeling. And, you know, what he said there about how they're kind of connecting it to the universe, like there's a lot of, Nintendo is very disciplined about, we are going to keep this consistent with the experience you've had in the games. Like, they could be opening up a serious franchise here. And Star Fury in the chat, welcome Star Fury, permission to come aboard granted. Box office for their sludge proves that all press is good press in a conceited viewpoint. Yeah, it's, you know what I think that is? It's a cope. And look, I have used this cope, my dear sailors and star nuts. So the first time I read a bad review of my book on Amazon, that's the first time I'd ever experienced, like, just an actual customer saying, I hate what you wrote. It's garbage. Screw you. And I'm like, but I worked really hard on it. I worked really darn hard. And it's like, you know, it's a great experience to have, you know, the first time you have to confront that. And I remember thinking, well, bad reviews mean that you're actually, they can be a good sign as an author. And truly they actually are, because if you're getting no reviews, that's what you really don't want. So being ignored, all things being equal, being ignored is actually kind of worse than not getting some attention, right? So it's a sign. The way to look at it is, it's a sign that you're making some kind of impact. But that does not mean that you should be looking at it as, if I'm getting bad reviews, then that just means it's good press. No, that's not what it means. Because if you've got 1 star and you've got, 1,000 reviews, you are writing garbage, my friend. Well, you won't have 1,000 reviews if you're that crappy, but if you could, that would not be a good sign, I don't think. Erigmar says, I want Chris Pratt to star in the new Warhammer 40k series. You don't want Cavill? You don't want Henry to star in the new... But actually, well, I think you mean co-star, perhaps? Definitely, he would be good in it. If you saw the terminal list, he would be well suited to the Warhammer universe. Star Fury says, is there anyone funny in Warhammer? You know, look, they definitely couldn't do it like Dungeons and Dragons, that's for sure. Warhammer is grimdark, like on the scale of like happy to dark. Warhammer sets the bar for the dark side. Like, there's nothing more grim or dark than Warhammer. Period. Like, there's nothing darker than the Warhammer universe. But within that, I've actually read a little bit of some of the novels, and there's like characters, like everyday people in the Warhammer universe, that they bitch about their idiot son who's not pulling his weight. And, so they have normal people problems in these giant hive worlds and stuff. So I think you have an opportunity to have banter among the Space Marines, where there's some jokes and like, look, soldiers in battle banter, and they make gallows humor, and that's the way I would get at it. I think Warhammer should have lots of gallows humor. We should have lots of very cynical jokes that the Space Marines make. Like, for example, in World War II, Sherman tanks, that would be the Allied tanks, were famous for sometimes, because they were gas powered, which was one of their advantages. They were able to run, they were pretty easy to fuel because they ran on gas. But the disadvantage was, if a German tank were able to really get a good shot, they could ignite that gas and it would burn the soldiers alive. It would burn the tank crew alive inside the Sherman tank, which is a horrific thing to think about. And the Germans would laughingly called the Sherman tanks Tommy cookers. That's what I like. And by the way, we had all of our same jokes towards the Germans and the Japanese as well. So, like, that's war, right? In war, you make cynical, dark, gallows humor. That's what I would expect from Space Marines. I would expect them to say the equivalent of like, oh, look at that Tommy Cooker go. That's what I would expect. And that could be funny for the audience as well, because like that's what we're in for. We know that this is dark. We know that it should be. Warhammer should be slightly offensive. I think that anyone watching Warhammer, it should be not for the faint of heart, if you do it right. That's my opinion. But will it get there? Well, Henry's promising. He seems to get it, so we'll see. Star Fury says box office for their Okay, read that one. Humility goes a million miles with an audience, Star Fury says. Definitely true. Erigmar says the orcs are funny but brutal AF. It's a perfect example. Yeah, in Warhammer 40K, the orcs will be hilarious. They'll be they are hilarious. In fact, now that I think about it, I'm more of a Warhammer fantasy guy, and fantasy's kind of the less popular one. But when I read so many of those books, and they had so much comedy in them that was natural. Like, my favorite army was the ogres in Warhammer Fantasy, and I freaking love the ogres. They were so much fun. And their whole thing is they're just ogres, and they eat. Like, their whole thing is they just eat everything. They're cannibals. They eat everything. And so they have kind of a Neanderthal sense of humor. And so there was this ogre talking about how one of the little Noblar goblin things had set up a trap. He's like, Noblar, they're little things that kill little things. He says, mind you, I did once see an elf with its head stuck in a bear trap once. Made me laugh for days. And I think that's hilarious, because like the ogre's like, oh yeah, he got lucky and he set up a trap and an elf got his head stuck in it, and he thinks that's hilarious. And I'm like, see, that's funny. And the orcs would have a lot of that going for them. So it would work. It would totally work. You just can't look. I'm a big defender of the early MCU humor, because in the early days of the MCU, it was part of the world. It wasn't making fun of the world. That's the difference. If the humor is if it's meta, it's awful because it undermines the plot. And if it's overdone, if it's overused, it's undermining the pace and it's undermining the tension. So like all things, it has to fit the tone of the world. So if the humor fits the tone of the world, it will work, and it should be there. There should always be some levity in a story. You can't have everything be serious, because life isn't. Like, you can't take life too seriously. So, and believe me, I'm a dramatic guy, so that's hard for me sometimes. I understand it. Erigmar, Star Fury says, Germans could laugh about Allied tanks, but at least the Allies had 80% of their tanks running better than less than 50% of theirs. Yes, well, we are in perilous danger of going down a World War II rabbit hole. But I will just say, yeah, I mean, by the end of the war, the Germans had nothing. They had no gas for any of their tanks. They had no fuel. So the Allies, there's a great book, if you're interested, called Carnage and Culture by Victor Davis Hanson. And he breaks, oh no, I'm sorry. Well, that's a good one too. But actually the one that's more germane is The Second World Wars by Victor Davis Hanson. It's great. He breaks down the differences in philosophy between the Allies and the Axis. And one of the differences was the Axis was obsessed with gigantism. They always wanted the most advanced super weapon ever. And the Allies were interested in practicality, that being England and the United States, not Russia. Well, Russia too, but really we're talking about the philosophy of the United States and the UK, which was pragmatism. It was, if it works, spam it. Spam the battlefield with those Sherman tanks, because we'll make 3 of them for every Panzer. And then same thing with the bombers. Once we figured out a bomber that was a good long-range bomber, we just made thousands and thousands of them. Same thing with aircraft carriers. Once we figured out a design that worked, we're like, spam it. That's all we do. We just spam the average weapon. That was how, and it overwhelmed the Germans eventually. So, and the Germans were wasting all their money on like, oh, let's get one more super weapon. It's like, great, you did it. You got like the best tank ever. You could make 6 of them. It's not a good strat. Not a good plan. Not a good plan. So I wanted to show you this article on this kind of subject of like treating the fans like fans. You are going to love this article. It wasn't a fuel issue. Well, I'm sure you're right. Star Fury says it wasn't a fuel issue. It was an overcomplication issue. I'm certain you're right. There were so many factors in that whole situation that would come into play. So, taking a look at... So, we're still on Mario because I am fascinated by this... By the way that this film, I think, is setting up to really embarrass the woke crowd, you know? And this is the thing. They really hate it when audiences get what they want. You know what I mean? Because it proves that their stupid worldview, all the bull crap that they believe about things, that they're shoving into movies in ways that are artificial and contrived, it's proving that people don't like it. And they hate that. Like, they hate it. They can't, because it shows them that there's a problem with their worldview. And so I find this fascinating that Mario is kind of turning into this. Okay, I'm making sure you can see it okay. So this is from an article in Paste. I came across this. I think Yellow Flash found this article. So hat tip to Yellow Flash. And I read through it, and it just fascinated me. The new Super Mario Brothers movie embraces the dystopia the 1993 Super Mario Brothers movie warned about. Huh? This guy is literally complaining that this movie isn't enough like the 1993. You know what I'm talking about, right? This is okay. Let's just get our bearings, shall we? 1993 Super Mario Brothers movie. We would be talking about the one with Bob Hoskins. Let's just do a good old fashioned image search. That would be this one. That would be this one. Dennis Hopper as King Koopa. There we go. Here's Dennis Hopper as King Koopa. What? What in the actual hell was this? Yeah, there was a Koopa Trooper. You know what it was like? It was kind of like a really a poor man's Luc Besson film, is what it was. Yeah. So anyway, so this would be what the writer Madeline Blondeau is complaining about here. So Miss Madeline is very upset that this, like, look at how happy and fun this looks. You notice how the weirdo woke crowd, they hate things that make people happy. Have you noticed that? They hate things that are attractive and beautiful. Like, this is beautiful to look at. I will say this. I have not seen a Pixar movie in a long time, and I haven't seen really a 3D movie except for Puss in Boots: The Last Wish that's looked beautiful in a long time. So here we go. After around 7 years in development, the Super Mario Brothers movie finally hits theaters next month. The project has roots in Shigeru Miyamoto designing Universal's Super Nintendo World, where the creator first met Illumination founder Chris Meledandri. I'm going to say Meledandri. In 2016, Miyamoto saw okay, so they basically came up with this whole plan for a company to kind of create a franchise that fits the theme parks. For a company that styles themselves after Disney and a cable company who seeks a similar creative fiefdom, it's a wet dream. Nintendo, in particular, has long aspired to have tight creative control over each and every aspect of their IP. Can I just pause here for a second? Do you notice how these people never complain about this with Marvel and DC? Why do they never complain about this with the MCU? MCU is a perfect example of this. They have a stranglehold on that IP. Kathleen Kennedy at Star Wars has a stranglehold on Star Wars. There's no creative freedom, but they love it. They love Disney Star Wars. They love the MCU. Why? Because all their bullshit politics are stuffed into those properties. So no, they love tight creative control. They just don't like it when it's making people happy. The company has a lengthy, documented history of shuttering fan projects, hampering emulation efforts, and shutting down archival attempts. Like Disney, Nintendo does this in service of magic, an undefinable sense of immersion distinct from reality. Oh, God, what a crime. The Super Mario Brothers movie looks to capitalize on that idea. It is slavishly on brand, with little deviation or variation on designs we've spent 2+ decades internalizing. Ideally, a child should see the Mario movie, ask their parents for a Mario game, then eventually visit the Mario theme park and see little differentiation between all of it. This is brand synergy firing at all cylinders, and something Nintendo has aspired to since their monopolistic 1980s ambitions. You know, from the beginning of this article, you would think that she was almost praising them for their kind of like for being authentic to the property, like, you know, keeping everything consistent. No, that is not what she's getting at. It's also a course correction from one of their biggest perceived public missteps. Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel's Super Mario Bros., meaning the 1993 one, hit American theaters exactly 3 decades ago this year. Popular opinion of the ambitious... Imagine describing that movie this way. Popular opinion of the ambitious sci-fi take on the series has varied over the years. Depending on who you ask, it's one of the worst movies of all time or a misunderstood cult gem. Guess where I fall. There's one thing that could be agreed upon, however. It's a very different animal from the video games. Mario 93 is isekai dystopian sci-fi, drawn in equal parts from 1984, Brazil, and Blade Runner. The central premise sees the two brothers square off against and here's the fun part, my friends. The central premise sees the two brothers square off against an AU Trump-esque villain, militaristic company man Koopa. Imagine the TDS, the obsession they have with Trump is unbelievable. It's like you're writing an article about King Koopa in the 1993 movie, and it's like all you can think about is Trump. Orange man bad. Orange man. Koopa holds a chokehold on the meat. Now look at this. So she's comparing Trump to what she then describes as Koopa holds a chokehold on the media, forbids protest music, and uses a private police force to keep people in check. Is that what Trump did? Like, what are you talking about? Who has a chokehold on the media? Who's the one that's censoring things that they don't like on Twitter and YouTube and other places? Who's using a police force to keep people in check? I don't remember that being Trump, but okay, I digress. Imagine theme park rules and regulations applied to a city, right down to Universal's terrifying facial recognition software. I actually agree with her on that. That is kind of terrifying. And you're halfway there. Morton and Jankel frame this sort of tight governance, city planning, and media control as inherently villainous. Further, it leans heavily on pointing out the ecological destruction wrought by overdevelopment. Fungus, a cornerstone of the Mushroom Kingdom, has been reduced to Flemish growths throughout the city. Koopa has... I can't believe she watched that movie and, thought about it this deeply. Koopa has an overblown reaction to dirt and grime, too, as his germophobia is a central part in some of the film's humor. Capital-driven development and uniformity, the film argues, are a rejection of reality. Super Mario Bros. Is a dark, scary film centered on the evils of capitalistic monopolies. It also happens to be a derivative work from a monopolistic capitalist success story. Released as a different film altogether, Super Mario Bros. Might not have received the hostile reaction it did from critics and the general public at large. Tied to the cartoon plumber kids recognize more than Mickey Mouse, however, it was almost guaranteed to be a disaster. It was a disaster that scared Nintendo away from making movies for a long time, but as Miyamoto grew older and our culture refused to let go of the 80s, he saw... You know why we refused to let go of the 80s? Because the 80s were awesome. We beat the hell out of the Russians. Reagan brought the country back to prosperity. The economy was booming. We were cleaning up our civilization. It was great. The 80s were a time of prosperity and fun. That they weren't perfect, but the economy was amazing and people were loving life, and movies were more fun than they'd ever been. Movies in the 70s were dark and depressing. The 80s were... It's just... Yeah, so that's why we like the 80s. This was what finally convinced Miyamoto. So she's basically arguing that Miyamoto had some kind of grand sci-fi vision for Mario Brothers, like he's some kind of Isaac Asimov. He's like L. Ron Hubbard. He's trying to say something about humanity, and it's like, dude, no, he isn't. What are you talking about? And she's like, oh no, but then he decided he wanted to make money. And so then he decided to make Mario more of a cartoon. It's like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Okay, basically, it's not that I want to make a Mario movie, she quotes, but that I began to consider that we should bring more Nintendo content into the field of video game making, Miyamoto told investors in 2020. With films, the amount of people who would contact our IP would widen and increase the amount of people engaging with our IP. Then we'd be able to further increase the spread of our media via video. You mean a smart marketing strategy that aligns with your product brand recognition? I thought this is what we love. We love that Marvel does this. Yeah. Translation. Less hyper-political Roland Joff fever dreams from the Max Headroom team, more inherently corporate productions made to sell video games. This is how Nintendo intends to further its own magic in growing into the new decade. Video clips and theme parks that enhance the perspective, value, and mindshare of an intellectual property. Oh, the humanity. But this isn't magic, quite the opposite. Since the 1960s, Disney has decimated vast swaths of Florida land in the name of, say it with me, magic. They have rewritten local laws and ordinances to destroy communities, filled swamps with concrete, and eradicated much of the regional wildlife. What has been done to the state of Florida over the past century is cartoon villainy done in the name of cartoon reality. Imagine if she took this level of critique to the rest of the shit that Disney does. I would actually be impressed. But I've checked some of her other articles, and she does not. So, to be fair to Miss Blondeau, who's, I think, maybe not actually a miss if you read more deeply, but that's neither here nor there. This is the one part of the article where, I have some common ground with the author on this. It's a little bit of hyperbole here, but, I think of this more broadly, but it's not like communist regimes don't do the exact same thing. It's the human tendency to pave over paradise. And fortunately, much of the middle of Florida is open land and swamp. So I think she's overstating the case just a little bit. But, I take the point about there is something a little odd about paving over a natural wilderness and then filling it full of cartoon fantasies of a wilderness. So like Avatar, for example. It's like we imagine the message of Avatar is we're ruining our ecology. So we're going to pave over our ecology and build a fictional Avatar world for you to enjoy. Look, I kind of agree with her a little bit on this one point, but I must go on. She goes on to complain more and more about it. The Super Mario Brothers movie and its accompanying theme park are the very sort of enterprise Geoff Jankel and Morton's Super Mario Brothers tried to warn us of. She is really giving this movie... It's not Blade Runner, okay? Mario 93 was not Blade Runner. Can we just take a step back here? Easy, recognizable entertainment that services a larger entity. A barren concrete city where natural life is choked to death. Figureheads who we blindly trust to entertain us and do no harm, but represent the further encroach of our cultural stagnation. We could talk about vows to do no harm in the case of doctors, couldn't we, in our modern world? But we won't go there. Morton and Jankel's Super Mario Brothers will never be a video asset. But in 20 years, that may be all the Super Mario Brothers movie is. Promotion for an aging theme park governed by fascist state policy? What? What are you talking about? Well, you must love DeSantis then. Miss Blondeau, I've got good news for you. You're going to be a huge Ron DeSantis supporter, I am sure, because he just took away that fascist state policy. And I'll bet you were really happy when you read about that. I bet you were I've never voted Republican before, but this is one that finally put a stop to the fascist state policy. What do you think the odds are that she would agree? What do you think the odds are that's how she felt? Another concrete monstrosity supported by a drip feed of memorable moments, cold, unfeeling gray, where even the smallest mushroom is plucked before it can grow through the cracks. Wahoo! Oh, that's a cheap shot right there. You know what? As a writer, though, I'll give you credit for the wahoo. That's kind of a nice punchline. Can you believe this? Look at how mad they get. People are having fun and they hate it. They hate it. They're just so mad all the time. They're just I want to see Mario 93. I want to see Bob Hoskins in a Koopa. I want to see a Koopa suit. I want to see Blade Runner in the Mario universe. I don't want to see this happy, colorful drivel that people want to take their families to go see. Fascist state, the fascism. It's like even Ron DeSantis didn't call Disney fascist. I mean, like, he hated Disney. He's like, screw Disney. They don't deserve all these special benefits. I'm taking it all away. But he didn't say they're fascists. I mean, can we just dial it back a little bit, people? Like, you don't know what fascism is, lady. And you are no lady, may I just say. I know the chat was just going by while I was reading that, but so Erigmar was saying to Starfury, the journal will now complain about something super problematic. I can smell where this is going. Rare Eddie 1, LOL, just the TDS is still shocking. Enjoy the show, buddy. Getting late here, so see you soon, Captain. Oh, well, thank you for coming in, Rare Eddie. The captain is happy to welcome you aboard. There is no late here. Just come on by whenever you feel. Starfury says 80s for the win. Absolutely. You know what the 80s was? It was winning. I mean, I don't know how many young folks are in the chat. I was born in 83. So, you know, I kind of caught the tail end of it, but I have some memory of it as a child. And I remember the energy, if not a lot of the exacting, like, obviously a lot of what was going on with Reagan and so forth was way over my head until I got older, until the 90s. But the general feeling of being in the 80s, I do remember. And Stranger Things is it's a bit fantastical, but it nails it. It really does. It does nail the general, you know, there was a perfect example of this. In Stranger Things, Dustin and Mike, they're two families. Mike's family are Reagan supporters, because you see the Reagan sign in the yard. And Dusty's mother is a Walter Mondale supporter in the 84 election, right? And what's funny about it is you get this feeling that, like, there was this community, like Democrats and Republicans. Republicans had their Reagan signs, Democrats had their Mondale signs, and everybody was still neighbors, and everybody was still a community. And you might think that that's just being nostalgic, but it isn't. Like, Americans used to be able to talk to each other in those days. You know, Reagan was hated. He was hated by the left. He was Trump before there was a Trump, but Reagan was still treated with respect by the media. I mean, yes, they were very hostile to him, but they had respect for the office that he was in, which was the office of the president. Some, you know, now it's like the things they do to Trump, no president has ever been so disrespected ever. And it's not, I'm not commenting on for or against Trump. I'm just saying that the culture in the 80s was different. There wasn't this divide. I'm not saying there weren't problems. Don't get me wrong here. I'm not romanticizing the past. But there has been a shift. Like, people are more hostile to each other when they disagree politically than they used to be. But I think part of that is when the country's doing well, people are more willing to put aside their differences because there's less on their mind. I mean, Reagan whipped this country into shape. Like, before that, Carter, it was falling apart. There were lines to get gas in the late 70s, and Reagan came in and turned everything around. So we were prospering, and there was still the looming threat of nuclear war. And back then, it was much worse of a threat than it is now. There were tens of thousands of. Okay, I'm not gonna. Sorry, I'm a bit of a history wonk. I'll move on. But Starfury says, it's entertainment for Pete's sake. Yeah, it's amazing how we're talking about Mario Brothers. We're not just talking about Mario Brothers. We are talking about a 30-year-old failed movie that nobody remembers of Mario Brothers, in which Dennis Hopper plays a ridiculous version of King Koopa. And this writer is comparing it to Trump. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like, you're not even... These people are so insane. Like, they're foaming at the mouth all the time. It's like, chill. You know, I don't spend every minute of my day thinking about whatever former president I hate. Culture, you know, I haven't thought about Obama in a long time. So, in fact, I didn't think about him much at all after he left office. So, I don't understand what their problem is. Cultural stagnation, she says. The disconnect is staggering. Anime feminist. Oh my God, what is this? Oh, read her other articles, my friend. It's a rabbit hole that I would caution you against going down it. This lady has some issues. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Starfury says, how dare you have been non-government approved enjoyment to the gulag with you, you youngster. Starfury says they will start making them over here soon. Gulags he's talking about. Okay. What else is in the stack of stuff? So that, this fascinates me that Super Mario Brothers is setting up to be yet another embarrassment for Hollywood. But let's talk about the MCU. And actually, do I want to show the video first? I'm thinking I might show the video first because I have something kind of cool. Because the Ant-Man 3 is not doing well. And I'm not a big numbers guy, but I came across this video by Ryan Cannell, Hat Tip RK Outpost, and I just want to talk about what's happening with the MCU for just a minute. So Ryan says it best. So I linked his video, his full video, in the chat. So give him a follow and a like. And yeah, this is what he had to say. Play.
Nielsen released their weekly viewership numbers, and they show Mandalorian Season 3 premiere viewership numbers significantly declined from the Season 2 premiere. And of course, you got to wait for Nielsen numbers because those are the most official things we can get. Those are minutes watched. They don't tell you how many eyes on what program or whatever, but it does tell you minutes watched, and it takes about 4 weeks to actually get that data. Nielsen revealed during the week of Mandalorian Season 3 premiere, February 27th through March 5th, the show was only viewed 823 million minutes. You can see it even got beat by NCIS, by reruns of NCIS, demolished by Outer Banks, Murdaugh Murders, and this was like the several weeks into the Murdaugh murders, and then The Last of Us, NCIS, and then bringing up right here in 5th place, The Mandalorian. And it should also be noted that includes all episodes of Mandalorian. So if people were watching it beforehand, binge watching Season 2 or Season 1 to get ready for Season 3, all of that is included in this data for The Mandalorian. Just like the first season would have been in the lead up to Season 2 of The Mandalorian. But the big problem when you're Lucasfilm, when you're Disney Star Wars, is that when you look at these numbers compared to what we saw for Season 2, it is a significant decrease. The total minutes viewed for Mandalorian Season 3 declined by 200 million minutes. Nielsen previously reported when Season 2 premiere released on Disney+, the show drew in over 1 billion minutes watched. So you're looking at about a 20% drop-off from that. And that is with more Disney Plus subscribers. That is with more episodes that people can go back and watch to boost that runtime up. All of that combines for exactly what we said, a massive disappointment for Lucasfilm and for Disney Star Wars.
That was Ryan Cannell, the angriest man on the internet, reporting how The Mandalorian is it's absolutely failing. So hat tip Ryan Cannell, RK Outpost. Check out his link in the description below. I think this is the end for Disney Star Wars, because how much longer can they keep this up? I mean, this was the last loss I think they could truly sustain, and it is finished. So. And it gets worse for Disney, and I can prove it to you. Try this headline. From Variety, Ant-Man 3 crashed at the box office after a trilogy best opening. What went wrong? What went wrong, as I have said so many times, is that the movie is a giant pile of crap. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. That's the presiding feeling about the box office performance of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Disney's superhero threequel opened to $106 million domestically in February, eviscerating trilogy records among the Ant-Man standalone stories, but ticket sales for Paul Rudd's latest adventure have cratered in subsequent weeks. At this rate, Ant-Man 3 may become one of the rare Marvel movies to either fall short or barely surpass the $500 million mark at the global box office. So it has just earned 470 million globally after 6 weeks of release. Not much higher than Black Widow, 379 million. Not much higher than Shang-Chi, 432 million, or The Eternals, 402 million, and nowhere near the heavyweights Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, 955 million. Thor Love and Thunder, 760. And it's not going to help, and this is the thing. It's obvious what is wrong. What the problem is, they're trying to launder their lies, right? The media lies about these movies because the movies are filled with their political agenda. And because the movies are filled with their political agenda, they have to come up with excuses. Imagine the absurdity of constantly having to make excuses for bad films. What a bizarre, essentially what is happening is the propaganda machine is churning out its drivel, and the state-controlled media is having to launder the drivel and explain why our dear leader is right about everything. And this is why they write these absurd articles that act as though they don't know what's happening. I mean, I guess I'm giving them too much credit because I'm assuming they're liars and not this stupid. But this whole article is based on a premise which is a lie, which is that this movie was going to do well. It's like this movie was never going to do well because there's been too many. There's been too many failures. And if you've watched the movie, first of all, my condolences for the 2 hours that you lost. Thank God it wasn't 3, like in Thor Love and Thunder. But you are keenly aware of why this movie failed. It's some of the most basic writing I think I've actually seen in even Phase 4. It's like even Shang-Chi had like dialogue that worked most of the time. This film had literally, tell us what's chasing us. I can't talk right now. Well, why don't you just tell us, honey? I think you owe us an explanation. Well, I can't. And it's like, oh, you slept with that guy? It's like, well, I'm a woman. I have needs. This is dialogue. And it's not getting better. This from Bounding Into Comics, Samuel L. Jackson suggests that Nick Fury will get the Jake Skywalker treatment in Disney Plus's Secret Invasion series. Once again, this is only news. This is only news to people that haven't been paying attention to what Marvel's been doing to every single one of its male heroes. Samuel L. Jackson raised a major red flag about the upcoming Secret Invasion series and how it will portray his character, Nick Fury. Jackson suggested the series will follow in the vein of The Last Jedi and Jake Skywalker, using it in the verb form, his character. For those unfamiliar with the term Jake Skywalker, it was actually coined by actor Mark Hamill when describing his character of Luke Skywalker in the then upcoming Last Jedi series. Make sure I have my overlay. Okay, good. Hamill warned Star Wars fans that the character he was portraying was no longer Luke Skywalker and had been fundamentally changed to serve the narrative that Johnson was trying to push. To that end, he dubbed his new character Jake Skywalker. Yeah, it was basically an interview. Actually, here's the interview right here. And he's basically saying, well, he's not my Luke. And he was even being complimentary. Well, he was speaking charitably of Rian Johnson. He said, well, we have a difference of vision. I see Luke this way, Ryan sees him this way. And that was how he was framing it. And he's like, so I kind of think of him as Jake Skywalker. I'm playing Jake and my Luke is somewhere else. And I'm like, oh, you poor man. Well, let's see. Can you hear it? Let me know if you can hear it. You probably can't. I have to work on my OBS system. I can't play it right now. But anyway, Hamill later stated, that's the whole crux of my problem. Luke would never say that. I'm sorry. Well, in this version, see, I'm talking about George Lucas Star Wars. This is the next generation of Star Wars. This is what Hamill was saying. So I almost had to think of Luke as another character. Maybe he's Jake Skywalker. He's not my Luke Skywalker. But I had to do what Ryan wanted me to do because it serves the story well. And it's like, well, the first half of that sentence was right. So Jackson was talking, Samuel L. Jackson was saying to Vanity Fair that viewers can expect of Nick Fury, even Nick Fury can be shaken, He went on to explain why Nick Fury has left Earth for space, as he was depicted in a post-credit scene during Spider-Man: Far From Home. Jackson says he's up there trying to process what the F just happened, and what his place in the world is. He added the death of Iron Man, the death of Black Widow. With that stuff going on, he just kind of checked out. Yeah. We're headed for the Nick Fury version of green titty milk, folks. That is what is, they do this to every single character now. This is why Top Gun Maverick, Tom Cruise is the only man that could have delivered the Top Gun Maverick that we saw, period. Like, if he were just an actor and it was Rian Johnson directing, that movie would never have made $1 billion, ever. It would have been awful. This is exactly what they would have done to Maverick. This is what Kurtzman has been doing to Picard for 2 full seasons, right? They're sad, they're over the hill. And I'm also going to mention something real quick, a couple of things, if you'll indulge me for just a moment. I actually did an interview last weekend with the Alchemy Lab, a YouTube channel. So I want to give a shout out. If you check the link in the description, I have a link to the interview. You can go there. I did a full interview with, in fact, let me see if I can pull it up here. Well, just check the link in the description because I don't want to belabor the stream. But basically, I did an interview with the Alchemy Lab, a fine chap in the UK named Matt. And he's also a writer and an Iron Age creator. And we just talked about Star Trek. We talked about old Trek. We talked about Picard. It was really great. We basically went on for a couple hours. So check out that video. Give him a like and a follow. And see more of your dear captain sharing his thoughts. But, on the stream, we were talking about this issue, right? Why do they do this to these characters? And one of the points I made, he's a great fan of Star Trek Beyond, which, he doesn't like the other J.J. Abrams movies, but that one he thought was the closest to kind of like how Kirk was. And I said, that for me was the worst of the Abrams movies. And it's because he portrayed, in that movie, he portrayed Kirk as, well, this would be Simon Pegg, not J.J. Abrams, but Simon Pegg portrayed Kirk as this kind of sad, bored. He's bored. He's bored with space travel. He's tired of every day is the same. It's Groundhog Day on the Enterprise. And I said, see, this ruins the entire character because Star Trek captains, that would be Kirk, Picard, Sisko, Janeway, Archer. They love life. They love living. They love being in space. They love being with their crew. They love challenge and adversity. They love exploration. They love diplomacy. They have a zest and a verve. They enjoy what they do. And I would say modern Hollywood storytellers, broadly, and woke SJW identity politics storytellers specifically, are incapable of writing characters like that. They're incapable of writing characters that are both good at what they do and love life. They just, one of the most interesting things about Star Trek is that it's actually about characters that are often facing danger. And they are often encountering great odds and facing dastardly villains, and they're saving the galaxy. But within all of that, they always have a desire to live. And they show that in, Janeway, for example, in an episode of Voyager, the Borg Queen has her dead to rights and she's looking at sacrificing her life. And she kind of has this line where she says, I don't want to, but I have to. And there's always this implication that just all the captains have lines like that. All the characters in Star Trek have lines like that, where they indicate that, yes, they're willing to lay down their lives, but they don't want to. They want to live. Life is great. It's meant to be lived. So they can't write a Nick Fury that loves life. They can't write. This has been bothering me, by the way, since I would say really after the first Avengers. I don't know why they did this. They did this in the stupid. It wasn't. I kind of enjoyed Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but this element of it was stupid. Is that they did the whole Hydra. I love the Winter Soldier, right? And they had Hydra take over and. Nick Fury was taken out, and they immediately showed that he was still alive. It's like, okay, fine. But for some stupid reason, they would never let Nick Fury become the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. again. And I don't understand this. They would not let Nick Fury just come back and just be a leader again. Why not? Can you explain this? and it was bothering me all the way through Endgame. Even at the Endgame funeral for Iron Man, he's standing at the back and he's kind of dour, and I'm like, why is this guy not leading Shield? Because Shield is back. Shield is back by that point. And in the Agents of Shield show, I stopped watching it after a while because it just got to the point where I don't know, the show bores me. I really get nothing out of it. So, but apparently Coulson, when last we left off, was leading S.H.I.E.L.D. and S.H.I.E.L.D. had been reconstituted. And I'm just like, okay, well, I don't know if they're trying to keep, like, who cares about the continuity of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because clearly they don't pay any attention to it. So then why? So I don't think that's the reason why they won't let Nick Fury lead. And now we find out that in the next movie, guess what he is? He's a sad, failed old warrior who's given up on life, and he's sad. He's sad because Iron Man died, and he doesn't have faith anymore. It's like, I'm like, Starfleet captains lose people. Heroes lose people. But heroic characters are able to grieve for those losses and move forward and celebrate what was lost. Like, celebrate the life that was, right? And these modern writers are not capable of this. Why? Why are they not capable of it? Because they don't have this view of life. They don't view life as being... I'm speaking very broadly here, but what I'm trying to get at is they view... And I'm not speaking just about politics here. I'm speaking about kind of a spiritual, just general consciousness. They view humanity as a doomed species. They view us as a plague. Like that writer we just talked about. Oh, we're creating all these theme parks and we're paving over everything and Florida's being destroyed. And it's like, this is how they view humanity. They view our progress itself as destruction. They view our modern life as hopeless. They view us as, violent apes that are plagued by racism and bigotry and all these terrible things. And it's no wonder they're so depressed all the time. It's no wonder that they're so miserable all the time. And it's no wonder that they write characters that are depressed and miserable and don't have the strength to overcome a loss. Imagine that. Nick Fury has been a spy master for like decades, and he doesn't know how to overcome the loss of a colleague? Seriously? How could he have been a spy? Not just any spy, the spy, for like 50 years if he didn't know how to overcome the loss of a colleague on his watch. Like, it's absurd. So, yes, that was a long diatribe. And I will take a look at the chat, see if I missed anything. Yeah, Eric Marsh says, my Japanese friends have something to say about anime feminism. Yes, the Japanese will be the Japanese, and that is how that goes. Starfury says, the MCU is a true embarrassment. God, they are losing the GDP of small countries on every movie. They truly are. Isn't that something to think about? These are the same people, by the way, that lecture us. They lecture us about all the damage your SUV is doing to the environment and all of the food deserts, and all the gentrification. How dare you build suburbs and live your lives and have all these conveniences? Meanwhile, they blow $400 million on a movie that's garbage because they just want to push their political message, and they feel they owe nothing. They owe nothing to their customers. They owe nothing to their shareholders. They owe nothing to the people they have failed. They owe them no explanation. They owe them no respect. They owe them no effort to do better. The ones who tell us to do better are the ones who feel they don't owe us a better second effort. They never do. And yet they're serial failures. They just throw all this money away. And then they want to lecture Elon, right? Then they want to tell Elon what he should do with his money. It's like, how about you stop spending $500 million on a movie that everyone is telling you is garbage and crap. It's full of, it's the exact same crap that has failed 5 times already. And you want to lecture Elon, the guy who's getting rockets to space. It's pathetic. Starfury says, all hail the Iron Age. Hail. Eric Marsh says, he interviewed me too, meaning our good friend, the Alchemy Lab. I had just published one of my Star Shatter books. Awesome. Very fine chap, Mr. Matt. Star Fury says Kirk loves space and being on the frontier. Absolutely. Janeway loves space. Sisko loves space. Picard loves space. Riker loves space. Archer. It was his dream to captain the first Warp 5 vessel. He loved every minute of it. Yes, there were times of peril and tragedy and difficulty, but within that, it was always about, this is what I was born to do. And that's why I love Top Gun Maverick. He was born to be a pilot. And guess what he is in that movie? A frickin' pilot. He's living in his hangar. He's got his bike. He's got all his cool tools. He's got his own plane. He gets to test the most advanced aircraft in the world for a living and push him to his limits. He loves his life. He loves life. This is what a good character is. A good adventuring character should love life. Should a British tar, well, what is a British tar should ever have ready a knockdown blow. I'm not much of a musical guy. HMS Pinafore, you know what I'm saying. And Erigmar agrees with Star Fury, yes, because they suck tremendously. They being the MCU, the swill is not selling well, and they have to lie. Star Fury says, fundamental lack of understanding of characters. Nick Fury is incapable of giving up. He always has a contingency or game plan. And don't forget the 200 million on marketing. Oh, absolutely. I'm kind of including that when I say 400 to 500 million. It's like they think that they can market their way out of everything, don't they? Like they think they can just, everyone in the fan base is telling you, you're betraying the comics. We want to see them wear their helmets. We're tired of the nano stuff. We're tired of the MCU girl boss crap. Hey, we like our characters, our male characters, to actually be able to be in the lead sometimes. Like, we're telling them. They know. They hear it. They know that this is what we're telling them. And what do they say? Oh, well, you're toxic. And they go and they run some puff piece to try and they think they can just market their way out of it. And it's amazing. They never learn. Like, they never learn that every single one of these things fails. And, I'm spending a lot of time bitching about it. And it's not because it makes me happy to bitch about it. It really doesn't. Like, I really loved going to John Wick and loving it. That's what I want. Whenever I go into a theater, and I love the theater, it is the best movie experience. And it's because you get to see you get to feel the crowd's energy and the crowd's reaction. That you can't trade that for anything. And a good crowd in a good movie is the best thing ever. And I'm trying to remember the last rowdy crowd that I loved being in a movie. There was one recently. If it comes to me, I'll tell you. But Endgame was pretty fun to see in a crowd, I have to say, because there was a lot of energy when I went and saw Endgame. What was I saying? Going to the theater is like the absolute. When I go to the theater, I want that feeling of coming out of the theater on a high. I actually had that with the first Guardians of the Galaxy because I thought Guardians was going to be dumb. I kind of actually thought back then that Guardians of the Galaxy was what we have now, which is a lot of dumb, stupid humor that makes fun of the lore and doesn't really take anything seriously. It looked weird. It was like there's a tree in space. I was like, what's all that about? I didn't want to see it. And a friend dragged me to it. And I freaking loved it. I was like, wow, that was so much fun. Star-Lord was actually kind of a cool hero. And and he put together the Guardians. And because you know what I thought Star-Lord was going to be? I thought he was going to be what all the male heroes are now, which is a big dumb idiot who was incompetent at everything. That's really what I thought Star-Lord was. And what I liked about it was that he actually turns out to be the fool triumphant. He actually turns out to be kind of a fool who does a lot of dumb things, but he has a good heart and he's trying. And in the end, he succeeds. And that was awesome. And I enjoyed it. And all the characters had chemistry and they all worked really well together. I want that feeling every time I come out of the theater. There's nothing in the world like it. There's no drug that can take the place of that. It's a beautiful feeling. And it angers me when a company that has all the advantages you could ever want to create that feeling, and they have an almost derisive, hostile attitude towards succeeding at that very effort. That the word fan service is a dirty word to these people. It's like, imagine thinking that pleasing the fans of a franchise is a bad thing. That's how sick their thinking is. And that's why I get so mad, because I don't want to go see Ant-Man and hate it. I don't. I want to walk out of Quantum Mania. That could never have happened, but just for the sake of argument, I want to walk out of Quantum Mania and be like, I was wrong. That was fun. That was cool. You remember the weird thing that did the thing? Oh, that was so cool. I want to see that again. And I want to see John Wick again. It's John Wick 4 is not a perfect film. I was surprised when I heard Mahler hated it. Mahler absolutely hates it. But I'm also not surprised that he hates it, because I'm like, yeah, there's honestly 2, 3, and 4 John Wick have lots of flaws. They really do. John Wick 1 is the only one that I consider a perfect film. And I honestly don't know what Mahler thinks about that one. Maybe he hates that one too. But that's the only one that's like a really well-structured, kind of flawless film. It has a couple pacing issues, I would say. But 2, 3, and 4 John Wick, there's plenty of fertile ground for plot errors and just things that are a little bit crazy. Like he gets hit by cars and gets back up, which is kind of lame, as I've mentioned. But it doesn't take away my enjoyment of it, because it kind of does the things that John Wick does well, it does really, really well. I think if you want a franchise that kind of has the level of incredible action that John Wick has, but also is usually well constructed, is the Mission Impossible movies. I cannot wait for Dead Reckoning, because like those, Fallout was excellent. Mission Impossible Fallout was incredible. That was one. I walked out of that movie on a high like you can't believe. I was like, that movie was so much fun to watch. I went and watched it again. I downloaded the soundtrack. I love everything about it. I want that feeling every time I walk out of a theater. So, Marvel, if I'm a little hard on you, it's only because I care. And it's only because I see such potential. I see potential in you. I want to help you realize it. So it comes from a place of love. Starfury says they actually ignore the fan base and data from the money they make from each movie. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Ain't that the truth? Erigmar says they are beyond insane now. Starfury says, are we allowed to like Mahler now? Are we not? Did I say we weren't? I like Mahler. Who doesn't like Mahler? Oh, you mean because he disagrees? Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, we can't like Mahler anymore because he disagrees with us. Yeah. No, I honestly, Mahler could never do anything to make me dislike him. He hates a movie I love, and I love him for it. I really do. Well, I don't think I think he fairly hated Avatar 2 also, and I can't really blame him because Avatar 2 had a lot of problems. And I did really enjoy Avatar 2, but I have to say, the first Avatar, I had to see it multiple times in theaters. I didn't really feel that with Avatar 2. I kind of saw it once and I was good to go. I like the world of Pandora. That's what Avatar has going for it. And I like the simple story of Jake Sully. I do. He's a simple hero. He's a man protecting his family. He's a man on an adventure on a beautiful alien world. That's kind of what I like about it. And there's a lot of dumb plot elements. And yes, I know it's got a lot of, wacky ecological messages in it. But Cameron at least has some craft to his craft, if you get what I'm saying. And Mahler hates that, and for good reason. And I don't hold that against him at all. And I don't hold it against, honestly, like I said, I was not surprised he didn't like John Wick 4, because even as I was watching John Wick 4, there were moments where I'm like, yeah, I'll let that slide. But that kind of bugs me. Mostly just John Wick not taking fall damage. Like he's leveled up enough. He got the immune from fall damage perk. I don't know if you know that about John Wick, but he has that. So yes, we are totally allowed to like. Mahler is lovable. Mahler, well, how could anyone not love Mahler? He's a lovable little fuzzball. He's the kindest critic ever, who will utterly disintegrate your entire plot. He will just surgically cut it to pieces. So a hat tip to Mahler. Go check out his channel. Watch his critiques. They truly are awesome. They're the best critiques on the internet. So, speaking of other box office fails, I think I could probably find some agreement with Mahler on Shazam. So, following Shazam: Fury of the Gods box office disaster, Jason Momoa, oh, that could be his name. Jason Momoa attempts to stave off similar disaster for Aquaman 2. By the way, this is another example of trying to market your way out of a movie not looking good. Jason Momoa might be trying to do some damage control for his next Aquaman movie, which could be his last as his character. I'm just going to skip to his quote because I'm looking for. Momoa rumors and leaks suggest most of the comedy in the movie comes from himself and Patrick Wilson, who returns as Orm to team up with his brother and rival. Momoa confirms all this, saying, "There's some really funny stuff with Patrick Wilson. I really adore him. We had a great time working together. It's like we're brothers. There's a lot of cool stuff happening in this one." Oh, okay. In the interview, Momoa comes across as confident that Aquaman will play a role in the future of the DCU and that his new boss, Peter Safran, producer of Aquaman and Shazam, won't let him down. Peter Safran's my producer and is my dear friend, he said. "I absolutely think Aquaman will be involved in the DCU. It's on, bro. There's no one bigger than Aquaman." Yeah. Ask Henry how that worked out. So he's kind of pleading for his job a little bit. Yeah, definitely. You know, the biggest mistake that James Gunn has made here is the mixed messaging. This has been the weirdest mishandling of a transition of plans for the DCU. It's like they can't decide what they're announcing on a given day. Oh, we're totally rebooting everything. Oh, we're not rebooting everything. We're keeping Henry Cavill. We're firing Henry Cavill. Oh, well, there's going to be this, is not going to be that. It's like, what? How's anyone supposed to have any investment in this series at all? Nobody can possibly know what's worth investing in this franchise. They're really caught in a pickle because I think that like they don't want to undermine these films that are yet to come out. It's like, so then why didn't you shut your trap for another year? Like, why did you make this announcement? James Gunn, you could have just had it be James Gunn has been hired to helm the DCU. And just left it at that and let the fans speculate. They'd be like, oh, what's James Gunn doing? Is he going to reboot it? Who knows? Let us speculate. Why tell us that he's going to totally retool everything, but then give all these mixed messages? Now you can't actually say what you're going to do because you don't want to undermine these other properties. It's weird. It's very... DC is very frustrating because a part of me sort of hopes that they really just stick it to Marvel because they have an opportunity. Marvel is in hot water. They've never had a better shot at the king than they do right now. And they're blowing it. They are blowing it. Star Fury, speaking of Mahler, our good friend Mahler, says, no, he really dislikes John Wick 4. Oh, I heard. He really dislikes... He is the kindest demon from the darkness there is. I agree. He even has a plushie. So I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk Star Trek Picard. So 1 minute, and I'll be right back. And we're back. So, Star Trek Picard, I owe you some reviews, my dear sailors and star nuts. I've been so slammed. I work 70 hours a week, I swear. I need to work 80. I really do, because my half of my time is my job and the other half is this channel. And I am working on getting some awesome content for you on Swords and Starships Locals. So if you want to follow me on Locals, it's free to message me directly. Give me a follow on swordsandstarships.locals.com. That's going to be my main flagship, audience interaction platform. And I may do some things with Discord or Guild in the future, but that's kind of my main direct channel with you. So check that out. And one of my goals is to start sharing with you some exclusive things on Locals about my own Iron Age project to start answering some of these problems in sci-fi, and particularly space sci-fi. And I would like to make my own dent on this. So there will be more to come on that soon. And just to give you kind of a hint, this thing in the bottom left-hand corner here comes from my own little sci-fi universe. So there will be more on that in the future. So check out swordsandstarships.locals.com. And with that being said, I'm a little behind on my reviews. So let's talk about Star Trek Picard. Spoiler alert for Star Trek Picard Season 3. This is for the most recent episode, Episode 7. I just watched it a second time. And I have to say, this is the first episode of Picard Season 3. I saw something I didn't like. I saw something, my dear sailors and star nuts, and I did not like it. And it was very much a Kurtzman kind of thing, too. Can you guess what it is? If you can guess what it is, tell me in the chat. That being said, I still like the episode. It was a good episode. I watched it a second time, loved it. And a lot of that is owing to Captain Vadic, the villain. Where is Jean-Luc Picard? Where is Picard? Her performance is bananas. It's ridiculous. Like, it is an outrageous, outlandish performance. It shouldn't work, frankly. It should be annoying. It should be kind of a dumb performance, frankly. It's so over the top, and yet she sells it. I don't know how she sells it. What is the? I'm sorry. I need to get the name of this actress. Captain Vadic. I know she's wasn't she related to the? I know she's the daughter of a former Star Trek actor. If someone knows in the chat, let me know. Vadic. Played by Amanda Plummer. That's right. She's the daughter of, I believe, Christopher Plummer, if I'm correct about that, who played General Chang in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. And by the way, General Chang is also one of my favorite, and he's also a very outlandish, over-the-top villain. And he's it's probably why I like her so much. She's a lot like Chang was in Star Trek VI, which is my favorite of the Kirk films. By a nose, because Wrath of Khan, obviously. But I know I'm probably weird this way, but Star Trek VI is my favorite by a nose. And so she's the daughter of the guy who played General Chang, and Amanda Plummer's performance of this character is so much fun to watch. And I do have, why does a changeling smoke cigarettes? Can you figure that out? I can't figure that out, but it's fine. It just looks cool. She lights it. She's like, Jean-Luc. She's so. Remember before woke storytelling when the heroes were pretty and the villains were ugly? Do you remember that? I'm not saying you can't ever have attractive villains. I'm just saying, But she doesn't look flattering. Let's just say that. So the episode mostly surrounds their attempt to trap her. They kind of try and turn the tables on her and set a trap for her on the Titan. Data and Geordi and actually Picard as well have just an amazingly powerful, heartfelt story in this. I really enjoy it. I admit it's a bit of a plot contrivance that they sort of brought Data back again. You know, they brought Data and Lore back essentially in this new body that just so happens, because of Soong's philosophy, to be aging, but the thing is, if there was any way to do it, this was the way to do it. Like, if there was any way to undo the damage that had been done to Data in the past seasons, this was the way to undo it. And it's as well-meaning and as, because this was really Brent Spiner's objection to playing Data was, I'm getting old. I can't look like this eternally youthful android anymore, and makeup can only do so much. And, de-aging is, honestly, I'm a little tired of seeing de-aging. I think it should be used sparingly. It's starting to creep me out a little with all this AI stuff, so I'm kind of souring on the whole de-aging thing. It was kind of fun at first, and now I'm starting to like, you know what? Let's just accept our mortality and move on. Because But this was the way to do it. Come up with a really strong story and character reason for why Data's in this new body, and then for extra fun, have him have Lore in there arguing. And I will say one thing for Brent Spiner. He has not missed a step. He is able to be these characters like he never left the role. It's unreal. Like LeVar Burton too, and Jonathan Frakes too, and Picard, Patrick Stewart, he's better, way better, but yeah, he's missed a step. But I mean, Brent Spiner more than, actually I take it back. Michael Dorn is just crushing it. I mean, Michael Dorn is as Worf as he's ever been. So I don't know, but for whatever reason, somehow Brent Spiner's just absolute clarity in performance as both Lore and Data in the same head arguing with each other is freaking amazing. When he's Data, I know he's Data. When he's Lore, I know he's Lore. Of course, Lore is very melodramatic, so it's not hard to tell them apart, but I'm just saying he nails it so much. There's one little line in this that annoys me. This is not the thing, by the way. There's one little line in it that annoys me that Alondra says when Lore is kind of monologuing, which he used to do in the Next Gen series, and he's just like, I am repulsed by your age, Picard. And she looks at her father, Geordi, and says, has he always been this arch? I'm like, see, that's kind of MCU humor. We're making fun of it now. We're making fun of the fact that he's a bit of a silly villain. He's a bit of a silly sci-fi villain, so we're making fun of it, right? But it actually goes over pretty well because the next thing that happens is Lore addresses it. Lore looks at her and he's like, well, if you spent so much time with these self-righteous, self-declared heroes, you would realize that a flair for the dramatic is kind of what you need. And I was like, I will allow it. The captain will allow it. I will allow that. But you're on thin ice. You're on thin ice with that crap. Take it seriously. That's all I ask. Plumber, Starfury had it. Sorry, I didn't catch the chat soon enough. Yeah, well, I kind of knew she was a plumber. I was thinking. I didn't know her first name. Starfury says, a tad slow, but felt all set up. Yeah, I mean, I think we're building to the conclusion. We got 3 episodes left, and I have a feeling from what I've heard that they're going to be barn burners, and we're kind of setting up the finale, and I hope it's good. I hope it's as good as Robert Meyer Burnett says it is. But Starfury says, she should have gone with desperate intensity rather than the over-the-top pirate villain. If she had a mustache, she would be twirling it. That is a totally fair critique. I can't argue with that critique. I mean, it is a fair. She is over the top. There's no doubt about it. Like I've said it, she's kind of bananas with this performance. And maybe you're right. Maybe I would even like it better if she were playing it that way. You could have a point there. Maybe what it is that I've just been so tired of. How can I put this? I guess I've been so tired of like the Scarlet Witch villain. Maybe what I've been tired of is these kind of like Scarlet Witch, right? She has no practical reason in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness for turning into this insane lunatic. Yeah, the book of whatever turned her crazy. Fine. What my point is, like, it doesn't. She's not a compelling villain. But we're also meant to sympathize with her. even though she's done these odious things and there's no reason to, and we can't even have the villain sort of earn the moral upper ground in the argument with her by the end of the movie, because she winds up destroying herself. And there's so much, like, I just want a classic villain. I just want a classic villain that chews up the scenery. And you know, one of the things a good villain actually kind of does is they are larger than life. You know, Hannibal Lecter is a great example of this. Hannibal Lecter is maybe one of the most famous, recognizable villains in movies ever. And he's a complete ham. Like, he loves chewing up the scenery. Anthony Hopkins as that character is just so good. And we kind of want that from there are exceptions. Like, I would say Giancarlo Esposito's performance of Gus Fring in Breaking Bad is one of the most cool, like, low energy, but like super well done villain performances of all time. And he has almost he's the most mundane man you will ever meet while he is running this drug empire, and yet he's brilliant and he's icy and he's cool. So yeah, sometimes that's fine. But sometimes I just want a villain that's larger than life, that's a little bit dramatic, and I guess that's what I like about her. But also, you're not wrong. I mean, she's basically... But Lore, you know, Lore in TNG was a character that was like that too. He was very over the top. But this is the thing that bugged me. So she starts telling her backstory of what her motivation is, and it turns out that she was a changeling prisoner of war during the Dominion War, and she was at Daystrom Station, where she was experimented upon, and she was given these abilities by being essentially tortured. And the way that this plays out in the scene as she's describing it is it's very much Kurtzman Trek. It is dystopian. It is horrific. It is just, she shows all of, like, they're holding fire to the changeling, and this scientist who's doing it to her is happy to do it, just happy to do it, and whistling while she does it. And this once again is the thing that bugs me, is that they have turned, they never miss an opportunity to put the dystopia into Star Trek in these Kurtzman run properties. And even in this one that has been really, really good, they still find a way to get some of that dystopia in it. And let's talk about Section 31 for a minute, can we? Because if you're a fan of Deep Space Nine, as I am, you're familiar with Section 31. Now, the original concept of Section 30, well, that might be a Freudian slip, Sexual 31. The original concept of Section 31 is that they are a hidden and unknown chapter of Starfleet that are an obscure, forgotten line in the original Starfleet Charter, which is literally the Starfleet Charter. Section 31 provides for, and it's very vague. It's kind of like Order 66, right? It's this thing that's just in the Starfleet Charter that says in extreme times, there will, we have authority to take action to preserve humanity by any means necessary. I forget what the exact text of it is, right? Yes, William Sadler. Yes, I love William Sadler. And he played the first Section 31 agent in Deep Space Nine. Now, you could argue that this was Star Trek going down a dark path right there, because up until that point, nothing like Section 31 had ever been shown in the original series, to my knowledge, or Star Trek The Next Generation or Voyager. Nothing like that had ever been shown before. And so they were really taking Star Trek to a darker level with Section 31, because they were implying that there is a dark side to Starfleet that we've never seen before. But I tend to like it for a couple of reasons. Number one, it was portrayed as being an obscure, very, very rarely employed. Like, if you know that Section 31 exists, they're doing a bad job, was kind of the idea. It was that they were a very obscure part of Starfleet. That's number one. Number two, Section 31 was not interested in interfering with the grand idealistic vision of the Federation or Starfleet. Largely, Section 31 supported the idealistic vision of Starfleet. They only intervened in situations where things were so bad or so bleak that, like, everything was at stake, and they were willing to employ extreme measures in those situations. But their goal was to then step back and then allow Starfleet to proceed as normal and hopefully not even know they were there, right? It was the idea was sometimes you need us to do your dirty work. And most of the time, you're the people we need out there. You know, Sadler had these, Sloan was the character. Sloan would have these moral arguments with Dr. Bashir, who's kind of the voice of the idealistic Starfleet, right? And Bashir would say, you have no right, you know, this ends justifies the means stuff is bullcrap. And Sloan would argue back. He would say, well, you know, we need people like you, Doctor. We need good men doing good things, but, you know, sometimes there's just shit out there that you can't handle. And we're here to help you, was kind of his attitude. Now, you can argue that there's no excuse for it, and that's fine. I think the show invites you to do exactly that. They are not portrayed as morally praiseworthy, but they were not portrayed as some cynical, fascistic spy organization that was just doing whatever the hell they pleased because they could. And then Star Trek Discovery turned them into that. Star Trek Discovery gave Section 31 uniforms. It's like, how could you even how could you even more misunderstand like what they were established to be? The whole point of Sloan even says it in like one episode. There is no official office. There is no actual location where Section 31 exists. It's a collection of agents who carry all the intelligence around in their head. They are not known to exist by most officers in the fleet, right? Now, you could argue that after the Dominion War, more people do know about them now because they kind of got famous because of Bashir and Sisko and everything, and that's fair. But Discovery, right, undermines that because in Star Trek Discovery, they're a well-known division. Pike and Michael Burnham know who they are. They have uniforms and special little comm badges, and they've created an evil AI. Oh my God, it's so bad. I hate Discovery so freaking much. And this is one great reason why. And you could just tell, the Kurtzman people loved Section 31. They loved them. You know why? Because they're the darkest part of Star Trek. Of course they loved them. Now, it's like they couldn't understand that Section 31 was meant to be the most extreme side of the good people. They were not meant to be the evil people hiding in Starfleet. That was not... Okay, they did create a virus that was genocidal. That's fair. That's fair. But, I mean, you see what I mean, though? They didn't really understand what Section 31 was, I think. So, fast forward to now. Daystrom Station, at least in terms of when it was mentioned before in the storyline, was meant to be kind of a research. So Daystrom, it's named after a character that was in the original series, if I recall. I'm pulling out, I got the wiki in front of me. Yes, I'm full transparency here. I have to look up Daystrom because I don't remember. Daystrom Station. I'm trying to figure out who the guy was named after because I think he was a character that showed up in the original series. The Daystrom Institute, etc., etc. All right, fine, whatever. I'll just wing it here. So anyway, my point is they were a research and scientific institute, right? Now they're like the CIA black site of the Federation, and apparently they've got all these torturous, evil, unethical experiments that have been going on in there for years. And it's like, this is what bothers me. Like, once again, we have dystopia creeping into Star Trek. Now, with all that being said, the actual story of why Vadic is doing what she's doing is just good enough that I kind of am letting it slide. I'm letting it slide for two reasons. One, because it actually is a great backstory for Vadic. It's a really good backstory. And I do quite love that scene where she's telling the story. It is, and the second reason I'm okay with it to an extent is that this is kind of one of their only offenses. It's strike one is what it is. It's like, this is a full-blown, this is a strike. This is a flat-out strike. And if you get two more, I hate this show. Like, I hate season 3. So if the next 3 episodes rack up 2 more strikes, it's going to be official. The captain is going to say, Robert Meyer Burnett, you did me dirty. This show was garbage. So I will tell you if it gets 2 more strikes. But that's strike 1. That is definitely strike 1. and it bothered the hell out of me. And but it's a credit to Mr. Terry Matalas and the rest of the team on season 3 that it was, even given that it was kind of dystopian, and I think a misunderstanding of what Section 31 actually was, even given all that, it was still a pretty good story. It was still a well-written story that explained a lot. It explained so much of Vadoc's behavior. It explained so much of what was going on the whole time. It explains why these changelings are different, why they have these abilities. So it actually is a great payoff for a lot of the setups. So the actual structure of the writing is still very good. It's just I just don't like dystopia in my Trek, okay? And, it's not that they couldn't save it a little bit. If they gave more of an explanation of why this kind of torturer was allowed to do this to sapient beings in the Federation, if they could have just fleshed that out a little more, I might have been more forgiving. If they had said something like, if they could have had Picard jump in and say, well, that was during the Dominion War, and after Section 31 was exposed, that whole operation was shut down. Starfleet took swift action, and that, et cetera, et cetera. And that would have been a way to kind of mitigate it, to show that the Federation, this is not representative of what the Federation does. This is not representative of Daystrom. I would have accepted that, Section 31 got carried away during the Dominion War, which would have been fair, because the Dominion War that was all the marbles for Federation. If they lost that war, it would have been over. It would have been over for everything. So, yeah. Starfury says Section 31 was meant to be very few people, possibly 2 or 3. Well, they didn't really say. I don't think they ever really said. Maybe you've seen like some of the behind the scenes like notes on scripts or whatever, but I'm just going off of what I saw in the show, and my interpretation on the show was that there were probably cells, maybe of like maybe 2 to 6 people, I would say, maybe 2 to 3, but cells. And I imagine there were probably maybe a dozen cells around the galaxy, and just a handful, clusters of agents, and they kind of were working in the shadows. They probably had official Starfleet like postings, is kind of what I thought. When William Sadler's character of Sloan was not doing Section 31 stuff, you might find him at Starfleet headquarters walking around, a full-blown lieutenant commander doing normal stuff, and that was his sort of cover. Or maybe he's a civilian, and he's like a civilian scientist, and you'd never know he was in Section 31. Actually, Enterprise kind of explained it a little bit, because Malcolm had been in Section 31 and had left the organization, and they sort of, his handler or his recruiter, whichever it was, sort of kind of strong arms him into going on a Section 31 mission. And so that's kind of my interpretation, that there were probably little cells of them around the galaxy, but not many. I would agree that there wouldn't have been many of them. And they certainly did not have uniforms. They did not have ships. They did not have an evil AI. Discovery mangled Section 31, no doubt about it. Starfury says, to be fair, we never saw Star Trek at All Out War until DS9, a black scientist original series. Not sure. Not sure what that last one means. You mean just like an evil scientist kind of thing? I'm not. But to be fair, we never saw Star Trek at All Out War, and that's what I love about DS9. I love the idea, because it was always implied that there had been wars. Like Picard talks about the Cardassian War. Kirk talks about conflicts with the Klingons, but we never really get to see what a war is like in the Federation universe. And so the Dominion War was excellent. It was, you could just tell that they modeled that whole story after World War II. They used, oh, that's what you're saying. Daystrom is like, yeah, I mean, this is what bothers me, is that they've kind of, because when the Doctor is telling the Captain, he thinks he's going to be decompiled in an episode of Voyager, and he tells Janeway, he's like, please donate my mobile emitter to the Daystrom Institute so that they can replicate it, so that other holograms can have the freedom I have. So that implies that Daystrom does good work for humanity, that they're like a non-profit organization. So the fact they've turned him into this black site is, I'm not wild about it. But the episode, other than that, the episode was good, and I'm still into it. One strike against them, but I think they'll avoid 2 more. I think they will. So, unfortunately, however, Paramount Plus has greenlit a CW-style series, Star Trek Starfleet Academy, that aims to bring in new generations of viewers. And I'm like, ugh. So, hence, in the headline to this video, I mentioned that this is my goodbye to Star Trek, and it is. I am very grateful to Terry Matalas for giving us one last ride with the TNG crew, and really, as it turns out, one last trip in a proper Star Trek story. We got one last adventure in a ship with a proper crew, with a proper villain, and we're having a good time. And we're exploring space, and there's even a couple nods to the Seek Out New Life and New Civilizations theme of Star Trek more broadly. And I am grateful for that, and I am enjoying every minute of it. I'm going to own this series on physical media. I've got to have it. I'm going to own the soundtrack on physical media. I love so much of what they've done with season 3, and I'm going to watch all of TNG again and all the movies, and then I'm going to watch this season after that. And I'm just going to think of that in my head canon as this was Star Trek Next Gen for me. And I'm happy with that. But I have no illusions. This is not going to get any better. The sludge must flow. And the sludge will flow. And I'll even just show you the headline I'm looking at real quick. You know, they show Chris Pine in this. It's this from Bounding Into Comics. And it's kind of like this comic book that they had. So Paramount Plus, they're doing Starfleet Academy. It's going to be a bunch of teenagers and oh my God, it's going to be so bad. It's going to be so freaking awful. It's going to be, you know, they say CW, and that is true. It is definitely going to be a CW style series, but I mean, how can I put this? It's going to be teen drama. There are going to be lots and lots and lots of MCU meta humor jokes. You know, there's going to be lots of this joking about space. There's going to be a lot of slapstick dumbass comedy. There's going to be the plot. I was reading in this article, too, that I forget where it was, but they mentioned something about there's a plot that threatens the Federation. And I'm like, you know, maybe that's just the marketing, but probably there's going to be some evil plot to bring down the whole Federation. I'm like, see, that's already the wrong approach. I'm okay with doing a small-scale Starfleet Academy story. I think that could be really interesting. The problem is that they're going to make it an overblown story, and it's going to be woke as hell. Don't even kid yourself. A bunch of young people at Starfleet, it is going to be woke as hell. I guarantee you, there's going to be minimum 3 letters of the LGBT alphabet in this group. And it's going to be, and again, it's not because I'm against having those characters in the story. It's that it's going to be so they can score the points, right? It's going to be so they can have the tokens so they can have the stupid dialogue where they show you how to use they, them pronouns. And it's going to be so ghastly. Dawson's Creek in space. Star Fury says, wow, are you surprised they never learn? Not in the slightest. No, they never learn. It's not that I'm surprised. Believe me, this is not me surprised. This is me making my peace, right? And that's my point, is that when I saw this headline, I was like, yes, like this is what we knew was coming. We knew that more garbage is on the way. We knew that if season 3 is successful of Picard, it is only going to reinforce their idea that they can squeeze more golden eggs out of this goose before it's dead. It will only show them that there's as Obadiah Stane says to Tony Stark in the first Marvel movie, you had one more golden egg to give. And that is what they're like Obadiah, just shoving that thing into Tony's chest, just turning the screw. Just like, oh, good. Thank you, Mr. Matalas. Oh, thank you, Mr. Matalas. One more golden egg to give. Imagine if you had been as selfish. You think, Mr. Matalas, that because you have an idea, that you own it? No. Although Kurtzman couldn't, in Kurtzman's voice. See, that would be the voice if it were Jeff Bridges. But since it would be Kurtzman, he'd be like, well, I'm making another show, and it's going to be really good. And we're really proud of what we've done here. We're really proud. And, it's just, I hate listening to these people talk. Like, you listen to like that, oh my God, that show with Wesley, Will Wheaton hosting the Ready Room. It is, that show, there is a room in hell where that is your punishment. You have to sit there in a room watching that show for eternity because it is corporate, glossy garbage. It is corporate, polished PR speak, every minute of it. Nothing that Will Wheaton says on that is organic or genuine. None of those questions are questions he came up with. It is the most fawning, fake, phony, and to listen to these people talk it makes my skin crawl. Like to hear Kurtzman, because all they're saying is just corporate BS talking points. Every single thing they say. They don't say anything interesting about the production. They have nothing to offer about their creative insight as artists. They're just doing a press release. It's so awful. And it's like, yeah, so I can't stand listening to them. Star Fury says, DOA, no. Yes, I'm sorry to report. So I've decided that, after Star Trek Picard Season 3 ends, this is my goodbye to Star Trek. And, much like Data, much like Picard had to watch Data die once and then let go of him and then and then watch him die again and then let him go. And then suddenly Data's alive again. I'm like, that is torture. And Picard has a really good moment in this episode too, where he's like, this is too much. And it was good. He really, his performance is great in that scene. Ditto Geordi. But much like Picard, I had made my peace that Star Trek was over. I had made my peace with it. I was kind of over it. I was gone. And I was happy that I got what I got. And I was like, it's time for new things. It's time for new. And I'm working on my own sci-fi universe and there's other things happen. And I'm not interested in dwelling on the past. And then this show comes along and I can't help but like it. And I'm like, so I got one more. So I watched Data come back to life one more time and now I got to watch him die again. So this time when it's over and the curtain comes down, I'm just going to put it on my shelf, my collection, and I'm going to move on with my life because Star Trek when season 3 of Picard ends, so too Star Trek as a franchise. And it's okay, right? Part of life is probably too grim. But all things end, as Spock observes in Star Trek 6. It's just a part of how the universe works. And so it's okay with me if Star Trek has had its day and it's over. And that's kind of what I think. So last topic, I just found this kind of interesting, as a writer. Wait, wrong. There we go. So have you heard of Brandon Sanderson? He writes a series of novels, and I think Shad from Hat Tip Shadiversity is a big fan of his novels. So this is one of them, Mistborn. What's the name of his series? So Mistborn, I guess, is the name of the series, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, if anyone's a fan, I've never heard of this guy. But so anyway, and I read the actual original article on this, but basically, from Bounding Into Comics, Brandon Sanderson gives the classiest response to the Wired hit piece about him and his readers. And it's actually from, let me catch this article first. Wired publishes nasty hit piece on Brandon Sanderson and his fans. So essentially, I read through the article, and it's basically this. So Brandon Sanderson, he's written just dozens and dozens of these fantasy novels. They're incredibly popular. He's made millions of dollars on these. He made $50 million off of his novels over the last year, which is a record for him. And that is a lot of money to make off of novels. But he's like one of the most prolific, wealthy authors you've never heard about, right? And he's just doing incredible things with this series. But he just writes what he likes. He writes what his fans like. He loves writing. He writes every spare minute he can. And he just churns out content And he admits fully he's not always been the best writer, but he tells his stories, right? So this journalist sits down with him, like does kind of like a long form interview with him, like spends a couple of days at his house trying to get a story, right? And this journalist writes this article basically saying, I sat with this guy for days, I had dinner with him, and I wanted to cry because he's so boring. I couldn't think of anything to write about this guy. And so that's what he wrote about. He wrote about how this guy is so boring and like, why do people like what he does? He's got, he doesn't kind of directly say it, but he has all these sort of indirect jabs at him being a Mormon. Like there's something weird about him being Mormon. And I'm like, imagine, to hell with it. I'm going to pull up the original article because I want you to see this. This is the original article that was written about this guy. Brandon Sanderson is your god. He's the biggest fantasy writer in the world. He's also very Mormon. These things are profoundly related. Make sure you can get a good look at this. Yeah. And this is by Michael Freeberg. Okay. I want you to just replace one word in this subtitle, and let's see how this would sound. He's the biggest fantasy writer in the world. He's also very Muslim. These things are profoundly related. With this tone, would you ever hear that? He's the biggest fantasy writer in the world. He's also very Jewish. These things are profoundly related. Why is it okay to just come after this guy because he's a Mormon? It's like these people have such a double standard, and this is why I say this is, when I'm critiquing wokeness, this is what I'm critiquing. This is what angers me. It's like you don't even live by these 6 standards that you want to impose on the rest of humanity. You want us all to be lectured about our bigotry, and look at how bigoted this is. Look at how bigoted this attitude is. Like, because he's a Mormon, that has nothing to do with it. He's a writer. He's entitled to have a religion. Like, so anyway, this is a super long piece, so I'm kind of just skimming it. He spends a lot of time meandering about, like, what is this? Yeah, he spends a lot of time kind of musing about all the money he makes, but he's unknown. Like, why does nobody ever hear his name? So that's kind of all I wanted to show you, was that really, that just gives you kind of a sample of the derision of this writer. And he really derides the fans in this article, because he says, like, why do people like this guy? The people that come to his conventions, like, they're not very impressive. And he's so smug. I should have highlighted a pull quote from this, because and he basically said to Brandon Sanderson in the interview, you're kind of a boring guy. I'm having trouble figuring out what I'm going to write a story on. And Sanderson says, yeah, I am. I like writing. I write what I like to write. My life isn't super exciting. I'm fine with it. I have a family. I enjoy them. I have the things I like in my house. I enjoy that. There's nothing wrong with that. And he's like, this is boring. It's like, well, I guess just screw Mr. Sanderson for just loving his life. I mean, what a crime to just have a life he enjoys and not have to and feel happy with what he has. Like, aren't you the people always saying that the problem with capitalism is all this greed and all this avarice? The guy is basically saying, like, yeah, I'm kind of boring. I have a boring life. I'm very fortunate. I enjoy it. That's the end of the story. Like, what? What's so evil about that? He's not saying he's evil, but you know what I mean. That's an impressive stack right there. Let me try this poll quote. The early books, so he says, most will hear this and think, at that rate, none of the words could possibly be any good. Okay, actually, I think he quoted him. He's basically saying the guy doesn't write well, and he gives a couple examples. The early books especially, my God, here's a sample sentence. It was going to be very bad this time. Another one. She felt a feeling of dread. There's a penchant for reluctant description. A city is tranquil, quiet, peaceful. Many things, from buildings to beasts, are enormous. Dark places, more thesaurically, are caligulous. On almost every page of Mistborn, his first and probably most beloved series, a character sighs, frowns, raises an eyebrow, cocks a head, shrugs, or snorts. sometimes at the same time, sometimes multiple times a page. Fine. Prose is hard, and yeah, those are all fair critiques of his prose. I count 7 books in which one of his characters frets about their metaphors. I have trouble with the metaphors, one literally says. Of his own work, Sanderson has said, I detest rewriting. I write for endings, and I write to relax. It shows. He writes by one metric at a 6th grade reading level. By the way, any publisher or agent worth their salt will tell you, as a writer or novelist, to write at a 6th grade level. And that's actually not because people are stupid. It's because you want to write in a way that makes it easy for the reader, because you want reading to be effortless so they become immersed. So there's a reason for it. So he's actually critiquing him writing at a 6th grade level. That's actually desirable as a writer. So this guy is just smug, and he's looking for reasons to dislike this guy. Anyway, so Brandon kind of responded to this. His fans were very upset about this, and they didn't like it, and I don't blame them. And this is what Brandon Sanderson said to his readers. Last week, Wired Magazine, covered that part. Sanderson published a lengthy statement to his fans in the Mistborn subreddit. He began, I appreciate the kind words and support. Not sure how or if I should respond to the Wired article. I get that Jason, in writing it, felt incredibly conflicted about the fact that he finds me lame and boring. I'm baffled how he seemed to find every single person on his trip, my friends, my family, my fans, to be worthy of derision. But he also feels sincere in his attempt to try to understand, Sanderson continued. While he legitimately seems to dislike me and my writing, I don't think that's why he came to see me. He wasn't looking for a hit piece. He was looking to explore the world through his writing. In that, he and I are the same, and I respect him for it, even if much of his tone seems quite dismissive of many people and ideas I care deeply about. Sanderson went on. The strangest part for me is how Jason says he had trouble finding the real me. He says he wants something true or genuine, but he had the genuine me all that time. He really did. What I said, apparently, wasn't anything he found useful for writing an article. That doesn't make it not genuine or true. I am not offended that the true me bores him, he noted. Honestly, I'm a guy who enjoys his job, loves his family, and is a little obsessive about his stories. There's no hidden trauma, no skeletons in my closet, just a guy trying to understand the world through story. That is kind of boring from an outsider's perspective. I can see how it is difficult to write an article about me for that reason. But at the same time, I'm worried about the way he treats our entire community. Sanderson shared, I understand that he didn't just talk about me, but about you. As has been happening to fantasy fans for years, the general attitude of anyone writing about us is that we should be ashamed for enjoying what we enjoy. In that, the tone feels like it was written during the 80s. Look at these silly nerds liking things. How dare they like things? Don't they know that the thing they like is dumb? As a community, let's take a deep breath, he advised. It's all right. I appreciate you standing up for me, but please leave Jason alone. This might feel like an attack on us, on you, but it's not. Jason wrote what he felt he needed, and as a writer, he is my colleague. Please show him respect. He should not be attacked for sharing his feelings. If we attack people for doing so, we make the world a worse place, because fewer people will be willing to be their authentic selves. That said, let me say one thing. You, my friends, are not boring or lame, he asserted. In Going Postal, one of my favorite novels, Sir Terry Pratchett has a character who's fascinated by collecting pins. Not pins like you might think. They aren't like Disney pins or character pins. They are pins like tacks used to pin things to walls. Outsiders find it difficult to understand why he loves them so much, but he does. In the book, pins are a stand-in for collecting stamps, but also a commentary on the way we as human beings are constantly finding wonder in the world around us. Sanderson explained, that is part of what makes us special. The man who collects those pins, Stanley Howler, is special, in part because of his passion. And the more you get to know him, or anyone, the more interesting you find them. This is a truism in life. People are interesting, every one of them. And being a writer is about finding out why. And, I'll just pause there for a second to say that is a lesson I learned late in my life, and I now know that to be true. I used to, when I was a lot younger, I used to think this is a boring person, or this person has no personality. And the reality is, all that means is that you're not listening. All that means is that you're not actually open to learning about that person. Yeah, it doesn't mean you're going to want to be their friend or hang out with them. But every human being there is something there. There is a depth there. And even if someone is maybe not the most talkative or maybe doesn't have an interest you share, I just believe that. I agree with that statement. People are interesting, every one of them. And Sanderson goes on to say, in that way, the ability to make Stanley interesting. Let me zoom in a little. It's too much. Okay. In that way, the ability to make Stanley interesting is part of what makes Pratchett a genius. In my opinion, that's writing. Not merely using words. It's what I aspire to be able to do. People are wonderful, fascinating, brilliant balls of walking contradiction, passion, and beauty. I find it an exciting challenge to make certain that the perspective of the washwoman or the monk sitting and reading a book is as interesting in a story as that of the king or the tech mogul. And I find value in you. Your passion for my work is a big part of why I write. You make my life special. Thank you. Sanderson then closed out with a reminder. I do want to make it clear, again, that I bear Jason no ill will. I like him. Please leave him alone. He seems to be a sincere man who tried very hard to find a story, discovered that there wasn't one that interested him, then floundered in trying to figure out what he could say to make deadline. I respect him for trying his best to write what he obviously found a difficult article. He's a person, remember, just like each of us. Close quote. That, my dear sailors and starnauts, is one hell of a class act. So I have never read a Sanderson novel, but I'm going to pick one up. And I'm kind of excited. I'm kind of excited to read it. I haven't had a good fantasy series in a while that I've been attached to. So it's a great opportunity. But, what I really like about what he said there is that, this is I think this is all when fandom is at its best, this is all it really is. We are a tapestry of people that have varying interests. And if we could just be more open to disagreeing with one another and be more open to each other, we would find there's a lot of fun in the world. And it's unfortunate to me that there is a segment of people lately that are unwilling. They're unwilling to tolerate anyone that doesn't share all the things that they value. And that's unfortunate because, at the end of the day, I criticize a lot, our woke friends, but I don't bear them any ill will. And it doesn't make me happy that they are in pain in their lives. And it doesn't ever, look, I have lots of interest in politics. I'm very political. This is not a political channel, so I don't go into that. But I will say I don't enjoy the gamesmanship of it. I have friends that want to crow about this candidate or that candidate winning, and they want to dance they want to sip the tears, let's say, of their opponents, and I don't enjoy that. I in a perfect world, we would live in a mostly stable, peaceful country. Like in the Stranger Things episode where the Mondale sign is on one lawn and the Reagan sign is on the other, but we're all neighbors and we can disagree, but we can still talk to each other. That is the most reasonable world. We're never going to live in a world where we all agree. We're never going to live in a world without problems. But I would not wish pain on my political detractor because they lost, or and vice versa. So I love what he said there. It's like this guy tried to write an article, and I will say one thing, however, speaking only for myself, I think it's kind of rude that Mr. Jason called out his religion in the course of all that and was kind of derisive. It's like, there's no reason for that, and I'm not going to try and raise a cancel mob against the guy. I think that's a pretty bigoted way to be. But the difference between me and people like that is that He has a right to say it. He has a right to say it. He wants to say something bigoted about Mormons. Go for it. I believe in free speech. Unlike, I can't speak for Mr. Jason, but I suspect, unlike people like him, I actually believe in free speech, including when I don't like what I hear. So, anyway, hat tip and a captain's salute to Mr. Brandon Sanderson, a class act, a hell of a prolific writer. I am jealous as hell. That guy can write about 50 books a year. It's unbelievable. Okay, he wrote like during the pandemic, 2020, he wrote like, I don't know the exact number, but it was like 6 novels. Or no, I think it was 7. I think he published 7 novels that year. Wow. And that's not even just work ethic. He just loves it. His idea of a vacation is I'm going to write more. That's basically it. That's all he wants to do. So, with me, resistance I face, but what can you do? Star Fury says, after circling back to Star Trek for a second, Star Fury says, after a 20-year hiatus, we may get a new Star Trek that might be good. I agree, and we don't need one. We don't need a new Star Trek. Things end. It's just the reality. And what I would rather see is us. This fellowship, I would rather see us produce new things. I would rather see more of Erigmar, a.k.a. Black Knight's Star Shatter series. I would rather see more ISOM from Eric July. I would rather see more Graham Nolan comic books. That's what I think, and I'm ready for it. I'm fine, and I'm not unhappy that Star Trek. It's kind of a weird conceit of modern storytelling that stories should never end. Whoever said stories should never end? The worst thing about The Walking Dead is that it never ends. It's like it needs to end. Like the story needs to end. And so if Star Trek has had its day, it's had its day. There's no reason for it. If Star Wars has had its day, it's had its day. Let it rest. Let it rest. That's my attitude. You may feel differently, but I don't need another Star Trek in 20 years. I don't need another Star Trek in 50 years. Star Trek is over. I'm enjoying this last ride. I'm happy to lay it to rest. Now, that doesn't mean that if something surprisingly good should happen, that I would be opposed to it. If there's an announcement that Terry Matalas has just been signed a contract deal where he's got his own Star Trek series and it's all him and he's under... well, let's talk then. Let's talk then. But that remains to happen. So the Culture Crusader, welcome to the chat. Welcome to our vessel. Entertainment and nerd culture exploration, our continuing mission to explore strange new woke ideas and bring back classic storytelling. Sanderson is awesome. One of my favorite authors. Also, hello for the first time watching. Like the stream so far. Well, thank you. Thank you. Welcome, and I appreciate everyone in the chat and everyone lurking and everyone that watches on the recording. It means a lot, and I endeavor to make better and better content all the time, and I will continue to do so. Tom says, I've seen good on-writing lecture series by Sanderson. Ooh, I got to check that out. I love a good author teaches writing series. Star Fury says he did an end run around the industry, so they tried to tar and feather him. He doesn't need them anymore. That is an excellent point that I completely forgot about and was not mentioned, or maybe it was. I kind of skimmed the article in Bounding Into Comics, so maybe they did mention it. But Shad from Shadiversity, fellow YouTuber, he points out that, yeah, basically Sanderson was fed up with Amazon taking a huge cut of his audiobook sales, and they do. Amazon is ruthless, man. They now, to be fair, Amazon has given self-published authors more ability to fulfill their products more. I mean, I use them because they produce my book for me. They fulfill my book with Prime delivery for me. I don't have to do any of that. So, it's not like they don't provide a benefit. But that being said, they are ruthless. Like they will take a big cut of anything you do. And a big author like Brandon Sanderson has no reason to use them. And so what did he do? He did the thing that is the most taboo in our current civilization. He went against our tech oligarch overlords and he said, screw you. I'm going to create my own crowd-funded That's how he made $50 million. I think it was 55 to be exact. He made $55 million on those 7 books doing his own crowdfunding. It's freaking incredible. Like, that's amazing. That's so much money as an author. Believe me, it's rare that an author makes $1 million. 55 million is crazy. That is awesome and so amazing. So you're right. They're punishing him because anytime they lose power, they being these corporations that run everything, Google and Amazon and all the tech, Disney, they don't like it when people don't need them. And that's why they went after Eric July so hard. They went after Eric July because he embarrassed them. Remember this. Always remember this, my dear sailors and star knots. Totalitarians hate, the thing they hate more than anything, is being embarrassed. They hate that. History is filled with examples of how much they hate it. Go to any dictator, fascist, communist, or otherwise, and you will find examples of this. Stalin being one of the most famous. They hate being humiliated. That's why comedy is so outlawed in communist and fascist dictatorships. They don't want comedy because the sound of laughter is what tyrants hate more than anything else. It's why they hate being memed. It's why a guy went to jail for 10 years for memeing Hillary just now. So, yes, Brandon Sanderson and Eric July have embarrassed those companies because they easily, with effortlessly, did what those companies struggle with massive PR departments and marketing budgets, what they can't do with all their resources, all their advantages that they have. They have just a slavish media just waiting to write puff pieces for everything they want to do. And one guy with a website and a fan base on YouTube makes $3.7 million like it's nothing. One guy who just has a couple of novels he likes to write. He's a Mormon that just has a simple, easygoing life and a dedicated fan base, makes $55 million without them, and it humiliates them. They hate it. And so you're right, Star Fury. That actually explains this article more than anything else, and I had been missing that piece. It's like, and Mr. Sanderson, I still stand by, he's an incredible class act for the way he was so forgiving. Probably owing to that Mormon faith that Jason is so derisive of, by the way. He was very forgiving of his, as he put it, colleague, which is a lot more charitable than I would have been in his position. And yet he overlooks the fact that, like, there's a reason why they're being so nasty to him. They don't like it, that they want the market cornered. They want their ideas are the superior ideas. And what they want is to eliminate any competition so that the only ideas you will be able to get in fiction will be their ideas. That's why they're going back and they're rewriting Ian Fleming's. They're rewriting Agatha Christie. They're rewriting all these books. Why are they doing it? Because they don't want any competing ideas. They want it to be that the only ideas you will hear are theirs. And that is why they hate people like Brandon Sanderson. That is why they go to his house. He feeds them. He gives them 3 days of his life, going through, maybe more, meeting his family, going through his mansion, seeing all of the things he enjoys his time around. And all that guy can do is say, this guy's boring. He's boring. Really? That's a you problem, sir. That's a you problem. That's not a Brandon Sanderson problem. If you can't see what's interesting about all of that, you're the one that needs to examine his life. And that just, to me, shows envy, and that shows jealousy. So I read Star Fury. The Culture Crusader. Tom, that lecture series is great. Taught me a lot about what I know about writing. This article is insane. The kind of unhinged hit piece you'd expect coming after someone like Jordan Peterson, not Sanderson. Sanderson is the least controversial person ever. That's why he's controversial. That's why they hate him. Do you realize this is how sick things have gotten? This is why they hate Chris Pratt. This is why they hate Chris Pratt, because he's not controversial. He won't engage. He doesn't ever say, oh, I'm MAGA, MAGA, MAGA. Pratt never says anything like that. All he says is, hey, the fans are passionate. They have a point. I like him. Come see my movie. That's all he does. And that's why they don't like him, because he's not helping them. And they're very much the woke crowd, that is. They're in a war. Like, they're in a war. And they have the attitude, if you're not helping us, you're working against us. And that's really what it is. So Tom says, what a good human. I would agree. Mr. Sanderson is a good human. And I aspire. I would aspire to be as humble and charitable in his position and to not forget the humanity. Because at the end of the day, he's also right that, what's this guy's name again? Jason Feigler, was it? Oh, that's the photo. I said Michael Freeberg. That was the photography. My bad. Jason Keehee is his name, the author of the article, Jason Keehee. So Mr. Keehee did have a deadline, and he did have an article to write, and he didn't know what to write. And I sympathize as one writer to another. So that's a fair point, but not an excuse, I think. Star Fury says, not a colleague, a corporate hack. Well, I can't exactly disagree with that either. So, the temptation. Well, my dear sailors and starnauts, I do believe we've covered everything in the stack of stuff. We talked about The Mandalorian cratering, Star Trek Picard Season 3 getting its first strike from the captain. Strike one. You're on thin ice. Well, not really. You get one more strike, and then you're really on thin ice with me. Talked about Chris Pratt. I would just say, check out in the link in the description below that interview I did with the Alchemy Lab. It was super cool. If you like Star Trek talk, we just did 2.5, I think, hours of just pure Star Trek talk. We kind of, the first half is all, talking about the original 5 series, as I call them. The original series, TNG, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, which are that is what I consider true Star Trek. And we talked about that for the first half, and then we just went into Picard, Discovery, Strange New Worlds. He hasn't seen much of Strange New Worlds, and I've seen one episode of it, and that was enough, trust me. And we went into it, and it was a lot of fun. So check it out. Give him a like, give him a follow. Also check out my locals, swordsandstarships.locals.com. I know there's not a lot happening on there yet. I have to get to 100 subscribers before they let me post big videos on there, because I want to do exclusive streams and videos on locals only, just as an extra bonus over there. So to get to the bandwidth I need about 100 subscribers. Until then, I'm going to work on some other things to try and get some cool content on there. So anyway, that's about it. Fu Man Blue says, Pathfinder is calling me back. Great show, Captain. Thank you, Fu Man Blue. Permission to disembark granted, sir. So that is the Captain's Cast. Thank you for joining me, my dear sailors and starnuts. I hope you did enjoy this live stream. If you did, please like and subscribe. Share the channel with someone else you think might be interested in chopping it up about some nerd culture. We just like to have fun here. Leave a comment. And thank you for being with me on a Sunday. I make Sundays Sundays are fun when there's some people to hang out with. So hopefully make your going into the next week just a little brighter. So that is the Captain's Cast. This is Swords and Starships. I am Captain Garrett, and I salute you, my dear crew. And until next time, I will see you out